What's up, folks? How's it going? My name's Mike. This is All Things Fish, and thanks for tuning in. Hope you guys are having a good one. As usual, we're gonna do a little talking. And as I mentioned in the chat, we might get nerdy about a few things involving aquarium lighting tonight. But we will cover a wide variety of topics. At least that's the plan from pretty basic stuff and we can get down as deep into the weeds as you guys would like tonight. And if I don't know the answer, that means it'd be a great opportunity for me to do a little learning on my own. So it's pretty early yet. Jimmy P, Muppet, June vibes. What is cracking, my guys? Hope you guys are doing well. So my week is off to a slow start. Fortunately, I had Monday off. But apparently, my kid had school on Monday, which means that Columbus Day or Native American Day or whatever you'd like to refer to it as um, is no longer the holiday that I thought it might have been for a while. So there's that. But Uncle Sam gave me the day off, so I spent it at the gym and doing a little research on my own. You guys know I'm getting back into the saltwater game, so whether that's good for you guys or not is up in the air, and it's definitely not so good for my wallet. But we'll see how it plays out. The Zen Ginger is here. What's up, Zen? Hope you're doing well. Thanks for joining us. We'll see what kind of crowd rolls in before we get moving. I know there's obviously Tuesday night is pretty busy as far as the live streams go, so I fully expect people to bypass mine a little bit, and that's okay. Catch the replay if you don't have time. If your favorites are streaming and they're a little bit more interactive in the live stream, you know what? Go ahead. That's fine. Just don't forget about me. Come back and let me know that you got the replay down in the comments after the video. And if you had any questions or if something I said didn't make any sense or you think full of crap, call me out on it. Feel free to write me an email, mike at allthingsfish@gmail.com. Comment on the video, catch me in the Discord, find me over at Get Gills. Do what you can, and I'll do what I can to either correct the information that I gave if it was incorrect, or I'll help answer your question. Ian Atkins is in the house. Ian looked like he had a great time out at Fishtoberfest. So if some of you guys might have been living under a rock, Fishtoberfest was hosted by the Greater Portland Aquarium Society out in Oregon and it was a great show. So Stephen P was out there, Dr. Anthony was out there giving some talks, Alexander Williamson was giving some talks, Bentley Pasco. So it was a great lineup, well worth taking the time out of your day um, to go to, and they had a plethora of vendors set up with it looked like a wide variety. Ian Atkins from Atkins Nature Aquariums did a nice walkthrough for us and then he also streamed Alexander Williamson's talk. So appreciate you doing that. Um, Helps those of us that can't make those events feel a little bit more included, and at the same time, uh, makes us feel a little bit more left out because we weren't able to attend. But right now is crazy as far as fish events go. Sorry, there's so much going on all over the place. There's a like I said, a swap meet in Dallas with Jadron from Jason from Jadron's Aquatics. He was at Reef Palooza was in Dallas. In Kansas City had the was it Center was it Heartland Aquarium Society or Center of the Nation? I think it's called Heartland Aquarium Society. They had a swap meet. Of course, Aquashella was in Chicago. There was a swap meet in New York, if I'm not mistaken. There was another event, obviously, Fishtoberfest out in Oregon. So right now is a super busy time of the year, and it's hey Gina, thanks for stopping by. Like I said, it's super busy, and if there's no excuse to not go to some events. Obviously, if it's 4, 5, 6 hours away, I mean, it can be, time consuming and financially impossible for a lot of us, right? But as scattered around as the clubs are, there's no reason not to find something going on and go hang out. Even if it's just sometimes a lot of the clubs will bring in, or even a store will bring in a speaker. Like I know there's a store down in Omaha that brings in speakers fairly regularly for their anniversary party. They focus a lot on saltwater stuff, but they bring some freshwater speakers in too. People like Tony Vargas or Scott Fellman or Mark Callahan. If you guys are not familiar, Mark Callahan is Mr. Saltwater. So he does a lot of home installs and keep maintains a lot of tanks. So if you ever want to look at some super cool projects, follow Mark Callahan because he has a lot to offer. Definitely things that you can learn from, get some inspiration from. And if you watched my short the other day about if you want to start, trending towards being a little more successful, find somebody that's extremely successful and kind of emulate what they do. Don't copy what they do, uh, but definitely, you know what? Find out what some of their methods or techniques are. Check out the equipment they're using, and replicate that to an extent, and put your own twist on it. And you'll probably be a little bit more successful, particularly like with plants or spawning fish. Find somebody that's keeping that plant and doing well with it, or find somebody that's spawning fish or a specific coral. If you're like Gina and Ian, and ask them, like, hey, what are your water conditions? What are you doing to trigger a spawn in these fish? And try to, if they're having success with it, they're doing something right most of the time, not always. Uh, but just talk to them and get any gouge or any information that you can and try to emulate and replicate what they do. Um, and hopefully it leads to your own success. If not, not each there's a ton of different techniques to make different things happen, right? We can be successful in different ways, and we can achieve the same end result using different techniques or methods in the hobby, of course. So it might not work for you. Try somebody else, and you may have to branch out a little bit and come up with your own stuff. So that's pretty awesome. And so yeah, hopefully you guys are enjoying the quick fish tips. Obviously you guys hang out in my streams long enough. Everybody's here and hangs out in the streams pretty often. You guys know I can get long-winded about things, so I'm trying to just provide like a quick bit of information that somebody could be like, oh hey, upload pops up, boom. No matter where you're at, if you're sitting in the car at a stoplight, whatever, you can play it and be like, oh cool, that was something interesting to think about, and hopefully you guys appreciate that. So if you could, any feedback on that would be greatly appreciated. Whether you think it's beneficial, you think it's a waste of time, stop blowing up your notifications. Let me know. Shelby's here from the Garden of Eater, and so I haven't. I'll be honest, I haven't watched a lot of Grant and Shelby stuff. I've always kind of loosely followed Grant through his journey the past few years, and after seeing Shelby on the Aquashella streams and seeing some of her like her escapes over the past couple weeks, I'm starting to kind of lean that direction a little bit more. So that's one of the great things about the community that we have here on YouTube and Facebook and Discord. If you're not involved, the Discord's a great tool to utilize. But props go out to Matt from Liquid Zoo OnlyFans. He's put together FishFam.link to help make these connections, right? And so he's put a lot of work into that, and it allows you to find a bunch of generally reputable sources, and you can find people that are local to you. There's maps, so you can find somebody nearby. You can find information on swap meets, events, conventions, etc. So Matt over at Liquid Zoo Only Fins is doing a great job with fishfam.link, and if you're not, check it out. You can register, sign in. I know he's been doing a lot of giveaways lately, especially if you are a Patreon helping support some of the costs that go into what he's doing with that over there. I know some of the Patreons are eligible for to win some free prints from Bex. So check out check out fishfam.link. Two, if you're not familiar with Bex and her awesome artwork, unfortunately, I haven't been able to see it in person yet. But go check out Bex. So Bex Fish Room, and is what is it? I can't think of her exact link right now. It's on fishfam.link. But if you are a Patreon at fishfam.link, you do qualify to potentially win some free art from Bex, courtesy of Matt over at Liquid Zoo OnlyFins. So definitely consider supporting him and help out and do what you can there, because he's doing a lot of work to give to the hobby. So it's pretty cool to see that finally come together. I know he's been working on it a while, and his work's finally coming to fruition. So that's pretty awesome. Vibes is gonna lurk. Hey, that's cool. If you want to lurk and listen, maybe if I say something that catches your attention, run over the computer and let me know that you enjoyed it, or you had a question about it. Feel free to ask. I know Ian and Gina from the Fish Fam are in the house. If you guys want to chat, you're more than welcome to come up on the stream, and we can talk about some lights. Kelly Foreman stopped by earlier. I don't know if she's back yet or not. Haven't seen her pop in. Uh, Kenny, we'll probably get into some salty lights later. So maybe Kenny will stop back by. Again, though, the link is in the chat. Feel free to click it and we can hang out and talk lights for a little bit. But before we talk lights, so I don't know if you guys are into like the contests on TV, like the singing contests and stuff or not. I don't even know if you're into music. You may or may not be. I'm into music, but I don't necessarily follow the shows on TV where the contestants sing to try to win a record label or whatever. However, apparently, my 16-year-old cousin, who I knew sang, but I didn't know she was, singing quite to this level. Her name is Rowan Grace from. She runs a couple pages, Rowan Grace Music. The other night, she was on the show The Voice, where they obviously they audition. You get a coach. You compete to win, money, contracts, whatever. But I'm going to drop some links. So here is her audition on The Voice. Again, her name is Rowan Grace Music. If you want to Google it, that's her link. She was on the show, and everybody but Blake Shelton turned their chairs around, and I think he was kicking himself in the butt at the end. So go show her some love. I dropped her link for the audition itself. I'm also going to drop a link for her YouTube right here. If you guys would go show her some love, it would be much appreciated. She also does have a Facebook, and I'm not trying to spam a bunch of links in here, but this gal is 16 and she is on the move. Definitely, like if you're into music at all, check it out. She's got a beautiful voice, especially for her age. I think she has a YouTube. Like I said, I dropped the link in there, um, but she doesn't really post a whole lot on there. She posts a little bit. She does post a lot on Instagram, so I will share that as well. And then she does have a website. I'm not sure. I haven't dug around on it too much. I really just found out that she was this into it last night after her performance. My mom actually messaged me. She's like, "Hey, you need to turn The Voice on TV." I'm like, "I don't watch it." She's like, "No, like your cousin's on there." So I dropped some links. If we can just show her some love. I know we got the YouTubes. The Fish family's pretty big. Maybe you guys are into it. Maybe you're not. But it would mean a lot if you guys would just run over to her Facebook, give her a like, Instagram, whatever, YouTube, subscribe to her, and just show her some love and really show her some support. So I think she's going to do pretty well. Obviously, she got selected, so she's on the right track. And yeah, it's exciting stuff. So yeah, I'm from a fairly small town, about 70,000 people, so not large. And there were the high schools had watch parties and stuff for her, like where they opened up their gymnasiums and stuff, and they played her on the big screen. And it was a big deal. Like a bunch of the town was there to support her and watch. And then, like I said, she got selected by 3 of the judges. So super awesome. Uh, so pretty cool. But we'll move on to something a little bit more exciting, and let's start talking about lighting and aquarium. And a lot of this will apply to both freshwater and saltwater aquariums. And there are a lot of, as simple as lighting is, there are a lot of intricacies to it. And you don't need to have a solid understanding of each and every part of lighting, whether it's spectrum or par or per, lumens or lux or any of that. But we're going to initially talk about, kind of some widespread ideas about lighting, and then we'll dig a little bit into to more of the details if you guys would like to. If not, then we can move on. Like I said, not everybody really cares about the details, and you don't need to know every single detail to be successful, whether that's a planted tank, a breeder tank, a reef tank, etc. Um, but yeah, so when we think about lighting, yeah, I see it. The most common question about lighting is, what's the best light for my tank? And that's kind of a loaded question, right? And whenever somebody asks what's the best light for my tank, or they'll say, I've got a 20-gallon long, what light should I get? There's a lot of factors that play into it, right? So when we're setting up a tank, usually the big factor, the big driving factor is tank size selection, and that can be based on the fish or inhabitants that you plan on keeping it, whether it's freshwater or saltwater, or just the space available. So lighting is usually secondary. However, when it comes to particularly reefs and planted tanks, uh, it should be given a little bit you should be given a little more thought into lighting itself, because lighting will can easily be the single most expensive part of your aquarium setup. So you can find glass, used glass is fairly cheap. You can find stands fairly cheap most of the time, or build one. Filters are actually, generally speaking, filters are quite affordable. Um, Heaters, for most tank sizes, you're going to spend anywhere from $20 to $100 on a heater, and call it good, and that'll be sufficient. But when it comes to a light, even on a very small, like a 5 or 6 gallon tank, you can easily spend 60 or $70 on a light. And then you move up to some of the bigger lights, like my 125. So that's a 6 foot tank, so it takes a lot of light to cover that. And then obviously I have CO2 injection on it, and I run a little bit higher light than your average planted aquarium hobbyist, I suppose. So I spend a little bit more on my light. I have, honestly, for what they are, they're budget lights. So I have three of the prisms by Nylock G on my 125. I know you guys are familiar with it. I've posted the same picture of it, hundreds of times, probably all over the place. Um, but the lights that I use, I have three of them, and I paid on sale. They were 140 a piece with free shipping. So I'm about 420 bucks into lights on the 125, and I would say that's on the fairly low end of things. Is about 140 bucks a piece. 420 to provide high light with some adjustability on a 125 is pretty decent. And just real quick, Geek Boy mentioned you wouldn't cheap out on heaters. Definitely not. And if you saw my short from today, regardless of what you spend on a heater, whether you're spending $10 on the cheap, no name Chinese Amazon crap, which obviously I don't suggest, or 120 bucks on something super fancy, regardless, I would always run it with a controller. Now, whether that's a dedicated controller like an Inkbird, or a whole aquarium controller like a Neptune Apex or something, I would agree 100%, Geek Boy. Definitely run it with a controller. So obviously, lighting unrelated. But even when you add a controller onto a heater, you spend 35, 40, 50 bucks on a heater. The controller, like an Inkbird, is 30 to 35 bucks, 40 bucks. You can get Wi-Fi Inkbirds for like 50. Um, it's just it's cheap insurance. When you have four, five, $600 of fish in a tank, it would suck to lose them because you didn't want to spend an extra 20 bucks on properly heating the tank. Um, so that's heating. But back to lighting, right? So lighting can definitely be a huge factor in determining your tank size, and it ooh, that's actually a good deal, Geek Boy. If you should drop that link in the Discord because I actually need a couple more ink birds. So if you could, thanks for pointing that out. That is an awesome score. 25 bucks money right there. If you don't have a heater controller, uh, right there, 25 bucks and cheap insurance. So, or Christmas is coming up. Send that Geek Boy. I'll share the link in the Discord. Send that link to your wife or husband or kids or whatever. Like, hey, this is what I want for Christmas. That's a cheap Christmas present that can save you a lot of a headache down the road. But back to lights, right? So it can be, like I said, super expensive. You can get into some high-end lighting, and you can spend a lot of money on lights that may not necessarily help you achieve your goals. So, uh, whenever people ask for advice on lights, whether it's what's the best light or what light should I get for my tank, I always ask them two questions first. What's your budget, and what are your goals? Because this will determine largely what light may be the quote unquote best for you. Because obviously, if your goal is just to keep some Zoas and Pallies in a little 20-gallon long, you don't need to put a max spec razor on top of it, right? You don't even need to go with Chinese black boxes. Like SB Reefs probably aren't even the best option. If you have uh, if you're setting up a small tank, like a little 20 long, and you want to go highlight planted CO2, um, it's gonna the best light for you isn't going to be the same as the best light if you didn't plan on going the non CO2 injected route, or you don't have the funds. Sometimes you're limited on funds, but you don't need to go super fancy highlight CO2 uh, to have a beautiful and successful planet tank. So whenever somebody asks about lights, two questions: what are your goals? What's your budget? And then following that, like, okay, what size tank are we looking at here? And I know June earlier was asking about uh, she wanted to know if her light was strong enough or if it'll go far enough, right? So we're gonna get into that a little bit. We'll kind of go into light selection and some things that you want to consider about lights a little bit. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to slow me down. I'm just kind of gonna run through this a little bit and throw some links out here and there. If you are more of a visual person or you like to read stuff, I would 100% send you over to Dennis Huang's website, the 2 Hour Aquarist, and read some of his articles on lighting and whether it's, the 2 Hour Aquarist. Dennis Huang is obviously heavily geared towards planet tanks, but you can still understand, he breaks down the concepts of lighting very well into a way that you can understand them quite easily without digging super far into it. So, once you establish your goals, what are some things you want to consider in a light? Okay. So, we'll say that you're fairly new to the hobby, and this is a hypothetical. You're fairly new to the hobby. You have a 20-gallon long aquarium, and you think you want to get into a simple no CO2 lower light tank. Generally speaking, um, one of my suggestions, particularly when you're a little bit newer, is to get a light that is going to work for you now, but also give you the options to expand down the road, right? So a Fuval 3.0 isn't a super high output light, but it does put out decent par, especially at shorter distances. But it also has a ton of adjustability. So adjustability is key. So when I recommend somebody a light, um, these days LEDs have given us so many options, right? And the price has finally come down on them to where they're getting affordable. So adjustability is key. Get something that's going to allow you to tone it down to your skill set and your goals right now, But down the road, it's going to let you ramp that bad boy up and throw a little bit more light, a little more par into your tank so that you can get into some of those more advanced plants or corals without having to buy another light. It probably going to run you a little bit more money up front, um, but it'll give you the option down the road because chances are, if you get into planted tanks, you're going to want to expand your horizons and open up the plants that you can grow and the different colors and leaf forms that you can obtain using higher light down the road. So spending a little more upfront will pay off dividends on the backside. So just a quick consideration when you're shopping for a light. Um, but what are some characteristics of aquarium lights and how can they help or hinder us, right? So there's a few different points to consider, and largely it relates to tank size. So PAR is photosynthetically active radiation, and this is measured in micromoles. This is how we measure the amount of useful light that a light projects, right? So it's actually a scientific measurement, a specific number that you can obtain using a PAR meter, like an apogee or a Seni, and what that it's measuring the actual number of trons, like photons, being emitted at a specific distance. So different when we talk about PAR, or if it's photosynthetically active radiation, we're talking about how much light does that emit? How many photons is that blasting at your plants or corals that your corals and plants can actually use to execute photosynthesis? Because not some lights do emit light that's not necessarily useful for photosynthesis. So we limit it to PAR, so photosynthetically active radiation is largely what what we're talking about here. So when you are looking at a light for your tank, like I said, determine your goals. So a low light planted tank, you're looking at easier plants. So for a rough par value, you want to achieve ideally, in the range of 20, 30, 40 par at the substrate. So par, as it emits from a light, so we have our light source. Boom, our light source, right? So par decreases over distance, or the amount of useful light decreases the further away from the light you get. So up here, if I were to measure the par right here, it may read 100, and that's at 3 inches, but at 6 inches, it may cut in half down to 50. So what this means for us is that the taller tank we have, the stronger light we need. And you'll often find that most well, not most lights provide it, but there you can usually do some Google foo, right? And you can find par maps or par charts. So what we're looking at here is, stand by, boom, I'll blow this up a little bit. What we're looking at here is a map for the Lumina Asta 20 planted light, which is a small pendant light. And you can see on the left, it gives you a map using a 60-degree lens, which is a very focused lens, very narrow light beam. And on the right, it gives you a 180-degree lens. So these are taken at 12 inches. Remember, I said when we're talking about par decreases over distance. So these measurements are taken at the same distance, so 12 inches. And that's 12 inches from the light to the actual sensor. So at 12 inches, if you have the Lumina Asta 20 uh, with a 60-degree lens, so a very narrow lens, you're going to get about 120 par at the substrate. So how can we apply this to our tank, right? And obviously you can see if you compare that to the wider lens lets light escape a little bit, so you can see where, like I said, the light's a wider beam. It's not focusing those photons directly in the direction of the light. So you can cover a better area, but you're going to get less light or lower par across that area. So when I say that tank height is a large consideration when you're selecting a light, so you need to consider your goals. Like, okay, I want to keep some low light plants, so I'm looking for about 20 to 30, maybe 40 par at the substrate. Okay, well, how tall is your tank? If your tank is only 12 inches tall, it's not going to take a super powerful light to achieve those goals at the substrate, it's only 12, 14, 16 inches away. So going back to adjustability and how adjustability and customizability is a great option. With LEDs, you can dim those, so you can ramp them up or ramp them down to achieve your desired par setting at the substrate, or you can simply lower or raise them to increase that density or increase that distance. Sorry. So you can use the dim function to reduce the intensity itself, or you can raise the light up off the tank some to reduce that simply by creating more distance between the light and the plants or corals. Unfortunately, good or bad. So why does this light have a 60-degree lens or a 180-degree lens? Uh, so if you want your light to if you like the aesthetic look of a light that is suspended way up high off the tank, you choose that 60-degree lens in order to focus that light so you're getting the same par at a greater distance, but at the same time you're also uh, covering less of an area, right? So you're not getting as much spread or as much spill off the tank. So a reason you might raise the light up off the tank is for aesthetics or to decrease the lighting intensity. A reason you may choose to place the light lower on the tank would be to increase your useful par. So it's close, the light is closer to your plants or corals, so they're getting more par. Or you just don't want the light flooding and spilling into the room. So definitely a couple options to consider there. Again, we have we can look over at the Prism by Nylock G. Oh, come on now. Sorry. Do this, do this, do this. Uh, and if we look at the Prism by Nylock G, he includes the s- see Aditi. He includes the spectrum of the light, so you can see it spikes in the blue and it spikes in the red, which is what we expect. Then it's got a small little peak in the green yellow area, and that falls into spectrum, which we can get into the details a little bit more later. And then if you scroll down, he actually offers the actual PAR maps. So looking at these maps, and I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see a little bit better. Oops. So he includes a chart or a map basically for the measurements through the air. And then you can slide over and see that he provides the same measurements through the water because you'll lose a lot more useful light through the water itself than the air. So usually if you can find it, what's up, Big Shrimpin? If you can find it through the par measured through the water will actually be more useful information because that'll be a little bit more applicable to your situation. And then you can see, so with this light, prism is a rectangular light. Obviously, the light is the strongest right below it. And then you can see how it tapers off on the edges, okay? So when I talk about using a wide light or a narrow light, let's talk about the spread. So when you place a light over a tank, you generally want fairly even light across the tank, unless you have maybe like an islandscape, right? So most of the time, in order to get the best growth throughout the tank, you want something that is going to provide similar par across the tank. It'll have a good spread from the front of the tank to the back of the tank, from the left of the tank to the right of the tank. And sometimes you can't achieve this through the use of a single light fixture, even if that fixture has a fairly high potential for output. So when would this come into play? So if you look at a Fluval 3.0. It's a long strip light, right? So 3.0 is a long strip that goes from one end of the tank to the other, and it is like it's like a beam of light, a wide beam of light. So that would be great on a 20-gallon long because there's no distance front to back to really cover, and it provides fairly equal light in the middle and on the outsides. Whereas if you use something like a Kessel, so a Kessel or the Asta 20 is a single pendant light. So like we'll say this is the light, right? It's a single pendant, so it's going to provide a fairly narrow beam. While on something like a 40 breeder that has that distance front to back, but it also is really wide, you may need to put two of these next to each other to get even light across that tank from left to right, even though it has good spread front to back, and it can produce way more light than you actually need. Uh, so going back to the flue vol has a good spread left to right, but a flue vol like the 3.0, the bar light, just by nature doesn't have a very good spread from front to back. So if you have like a tank that's uh, 18 inches front to back or 24 inches even front to back, you're going to want, you may need two FluVol 3.0s to get the coverage from the front to the back. You'll have excellent coverage left to right with one, but it probably won't provide even coverage from front to back. So generally, you want to provide, fairly even coverage to your tank to just, and that allows you to have an equal opportunity for plants to grow. Now, there are times where you don't want even coverage around the tank. Like if you had an island scape, right? So we'll say you had a 6 foot tank and you had this big island in the middle of it. You may use pendant lights to put the majority of the light on that island to help that island uh, pop out. Uh, and then uh, you don't want so much attention on the area around it. So those are a little bit dimmer. You may not need so much light for the plants. So that might be a time where you don't want a light that covers the entire tank, right? You want more of a specular or a point source light. So when I talk about point source or specular, so going back to like the Asta, like this is a pendant light, pretend, and it's a single point, a small. All the light is coming from a small source, right? It's kind of like a spotlight, if you will. Whereas something like a T5 bulb or the FluVol 3.0 that's really long and wide and provides a lot of light is more diffused, right? So the specular light or the point source light will give you an intense light in one spot, but it's going to rapidly fall off on the sides, whereas a diffuse type light like a T5 or the 3.0 is going to give you widespread without getting super hot spots like that. So just something to think about there. So we talked about, why we might want to use diffuse versus like a specular or a point spot type light source. Another reason you might want a single small light source like a Kessel, and you see this a lot in saltwater, something like a Kessel or the Asta, or even some of the smaller LED pendants like the AI primes. It's a very small light, and what that does is that gives you the shimmer, right? So you get a shimmer in your tank. Whereas if you have a diffuse light source like the 3.0 or the T5s or um, it's providing a lot of light spread over a wide area, you're not going to get the light's not going to reflect and refract off those ripples on the surface as much. So use that. You might use a point source type light to get that cool shimmer effect where it reflects up on the walls, looks like waves or the shimmer down in the water. So those are things to consider as well. So goals, right? So going into lighting requirements and your goals. So we know you shimmer, Matt, and we appreciate you for it. That's largely why we keep you around. So we talked about our spread. We talked about when you might use a certain type of light source. Let's get into the actual like lights themselves, right? So uh, anymore with LEDs, you can throw a bunch of light for really cheap. Unfortunately, uh, there is a thing as too much light, and people run into it a lot and run into problems. And now that LEDs are a lot more affordable, uh, we often see people struggling with algae problems because, when in the 90s and even in the early 2000s, most people were just running T8, so a standard fluorescent tube, um, or maybe T5 normal outputs, which don't throw a lot of light. So nobody had algae problems because they simply didn't have sufficient light to really support it unless they just left them on 24/7, which happens fairly often. Um, I thought I saw something real quick that caught my attention. Yeah, there's. But since LEDs are so affordable, and since the output of LEDs has come along so far, we see a lot more people having problems with algae. So you may not need a ton of light, right? So get something that is dimmable, is my recommendation, whether it's simply using potentiometers that you rotate, like actual knobs that you rotate, or if it has an app or a remote, get something that's dimmable so that you can tune it to your tank. If not, the only option you're going to have to tone it down or increase brightness is to raise and lower it, and that can kind of be a headache and limit your mounting, your options as far as mounting. Uh, we were talking about pendant lights, like the Lumini Asta that Steven said he got, and Ian said he has a Pixie 30 on a 20 high, and he likes that shimmer. And if you look at his videos, like generally speaking, like that shimmer is very evident in videos and more prominent in person. So if you like that look, then you're going to want to consider something more like a pendant or a smaller LED type fixture instead of like a wide array or a bar. You want something that has an actual LED puck instead of just a bunch of flat LEDs spread out over a couple feet. Steven said he got the Asta 20. Ooh boy. Oh, and he really enjoys it. So I'm glad you enjoyed it, Steven. Hopefully, you think it's worth your money. Like I said, it's a light that I've seen a lot of people try. I haven't just just haven't had a tank set up that it would work on, but it's caught my attention for quite some time. I think the uh, the price point is pretty fair on that. So I'd be curious if you could do a video or something on it. That'd be awesome, Steven. I'd appreciate it, and I'd incorporate that into future talks or when people ask me about lights, I'll definitely send them that way. Uh, get into compact fluorescence. Um, so when I talked about lights, 10, 15 years ago, there were a lot more options. And fortunately for us, those options have gone away. So you're no longer seeing the T8s, so standard fluorescent tubes. You're not seeing compact fluorescents or power compacts, which are the real thin tubes that usually like are U-shaped. Um, and then even T5HOs are sadly dying out. Metal halides used to be an option, but I don't even know. I haven't looked, I guess. Ian probably know better, I suppose, but I don't even know if they're making metal halide lights for reef tanks and stuff anymore. They're just hot and expensive. You got to change the bulbs all the time. So, somebody asked a question. If you spend more on a light, you get a nicer light, right? Unfortunately, not. A lot of times you're paying money for a name, but that doesn't mean that just any light will do, right? So sometimes you're paying a little bit for a name, but you're paying for higher quality components, even if you don't see them. So the way most lights these days that people are buying are LEDs, right? So it doesn't have a bulb. It's not like this desk lamp that's got a screw-in bulb. It's not a T5 where it's got tubes that you swap out. So an LED is a diode that emits light, as the name suggests, shockingly. But you'll have a power supply, which is where it actually plugs into the wall, and it'll send power to a driver, and that driver will tweak it and tune it and do weird electrical things. I'm not an E&E guy, so generally that stuff goes over my head. But that driver will send a specific voltage of light to the actual diode, which is just a tiny little chip, to emit light. And that's how we use PWM controllers that allow us to send different voltages to that light to increase or decrease the brightness. So with LEDs, whereas T5s, you had, more or less two things to spend money on when you were buying a T5 light. You had a ballast, which is the power source that fires up the bulb, and you had a bulb. Now, when we go over to LEDs have a few more components where they have a power supply, they've got drivers, the actual diodes, and there's a wide range in quality of those components. So even though on the outside, two lights may look exactly the same, and they may even have fairly similar power usages and power outputs, a lot of the times the quality of the components in those is drastically different, and that's why you'll see a lot of LEDs burn out fairly quick and stop working, is because they just had the actual diodes themselves were cheap, or they used poor drivers. A lot of times it's the drivers. LEDs are usually fairly long life components. A lot of them will advertise them like 10,000 hours of burn time, which is pretty crazy. So, um, so yeah, well, you don't need to spend an arm and a leg. More expensive doesn't necessarily mean better. There's definitely factors to consider. There are some right now on the market, and I'm not going to name names. There's some lights that are a little bit lower priced than some new lights on the market even at a lower price, just because they use nicer components. It's a higher quality light that's going to last a little bit longer. And I'm a strong proponent of recommending that you buy a high quality light instead of cheap light. Uh, it's it's going to pay off again. Like I said, it's going to pay off in no time. Different light requirements sometimes intentionally create a dimmer area for the light stuff, or I put the low light plants where the frog bit hangs out. That's an awesome point. And like I kind of touched on when we talked about that island tank and where you might want to use like a pendant type light where it has a very narrow beam. Um, Sometimes to get the desired effect in your tank or to create areas of higher light or lower light, you can use a light source like that. And while it may not be aesthetically pleasing, with lights not being like I don't know, I'm a little bit OCD about it, I guess, but with lights not being centered over the tank, sometimes you create higher light on one side of the tank than the other. My 125 right now, the way I have it set up, simply due to what's up, Kelly?
Hello. I
Simply
can't
due
come up
to
for very long because it's past my bedtime, but I thought I'd come
oh,
up.
that's fine. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So, because of the way my 125 is set up right now, it's a 6 foot long tank. I have higher light plants on one side than the other. So the prisms I have maybe at 60% on the one on the left, 40% on the one in the middle, and then 20% on the one on the right. So I do have different higher and lower light sections. What's Fat Kitty up to?
He's tired. He's very
Tired?
tired.
You guys have been busy.
Oh my god. I'm still tired. I slept like 9 or 10 hours last night, so I slept till 10 o'clock this morning.
Well, you're slowly catching up.
Yeah, slowly. So
So for those that aren't aware, this is Kelly Foreman, Fat Kitty's owner. She was at Aquashella with Brooklyn Bell and Jenna P in the scaping contest.
yeah, that
So
was a thing I did. You know.
pretty cool. And
Yeah.
you guys did an awesome scape. I appreciate it.
Thank
I was
you.
curious to see because obviously you guys had that awesome tank where it's like 3 foot by 2 foot by whatever. Super awesome tank. What
Yeah.
what did you use for a light at the actual
So it
contest?
comes with two Fluval 3.0s, which is not it's not enough for long term because it's so deep. I think honestly, if I were to use Fluval 3.0s with it, which I probably won't, I think it needs four of them.
Mhm.
I have because
Okay.
I have three of them on my standard 90 gallon, and
Okay.
I think that's just barely enough. So I think it
Yeah.
would need four of them for what I like to do.
Right.
But I would I mean, I don't know, I'm probably gonna grow macroalgae in it, so
Mhm.
I mean, I've been told to use plant lights for those, but I don't know how many I would need. So I'm not sure
Like
what I
I said,
use.
I like the 3.0s, and I
Yeah,
generally
that's
recommend them
fine.
because it is a solid light with a lot of
Yeah.
options. It's not the best out there. It's a good answer for the majority of people getting into planted tanks, right?
Yeah.
Um, Unfortunately, like Kelly mentioned, it doesn't have a very good spread front to back and doesn't
Mhm.
have a ton of par. So if you have a tank that's
Yeah.
deeper front to back, anything more than 12 inches, so a 40 breeder, I would use two of them. Even though it's shorter,
Yeah,
I
you'd
would just
use
dim them
two of them.
down.
Yeah, you need two of them on a 40 breeder, I think. But you could get away with one Chihiros because they have a better spread and they're brighter. And if you either hang it or you put it up on legs, you're gonna have way more light. So in the end, I think that Chihiros is a much better value, even though they're close to the same price, a Chihiros and a Fluval 3.0. But since they're you don't have to buy as many of them, I think they're a
Right.
better value. So
And
I
that's
think they
like
look
I said,
better too.
it's
I
definitely
think
a
that
cleaner looking light.
well, I think that the color of the light is nicer too. It has
Go
more
ahead.
color options. I think that the Fluval light is a little warm and the Chihiros is a little cooler,
Mhm.
which I prefer the look of. So, it's
So,
horses for courses. I'm not going to get rid of my Fluval 3.0s
oh,
that I have because that would be wasteful. There's no need to.
Right. Like I said, it's not a bad light. It's a good
No,
light.
it's
Just
a good light.
understand its limitations, and it may not be best for your situation.
Yeah,
If you have a tank like Kelly's going to set up, and it's very deep front to back, for the
yeah.
cost of 4 Fluval 3.0s, you could put two of a nicer light on there and save yourself a lot of money.
A lot of
So
money. Yeah, it's so you just have to think about that. I do think that the Fluval app is a little easier to use.
is
I
it
mean, it's the Chihiro's app is not bad. It's definitely not bad to use, but I think the Fluval app is a little easier. And if you're intimidated by technology, it might be a
okay?
better choice. I mean, but I'm not great with technology either, and I still find the Chihiro's app is still doable. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
So
Yeah, like I said, I haven't used the Cheerios yet. I
yeah,
know Bex just got one, and she really
yeah,
likes it. I've never
yeah.
heard anybody complain about the Cheerios.
No, and now that I have used both, I won't go back. What the heck
Right.
am I growing with 4 Fluval 3.0? So on my 90, I have 3 of them. So a 90 is a pretty deep tank, and honestly, like, it's not I mean, I grow them all full blast too. I mean, I don't think it's that much light. I mean, I have never put a par meter on my tank because I don't have a par meter. But I don't think it's that much light. Honestly, I think I could put a 4th on there, a 4th, and be
Hmm.
just fine. It's not blasting because it's a fairly deep tank. Now, in a 40 breeder, I have 2 of them, but I have them turned down to like, I think I have them at 50 or 60%
Hmm.
because it's
Okay.
a much shallower tank and it's an exponent or like a geometric relationship. It's not linear
Hmm.
between depth and penetration of light.
Right. And we were talking about that.
So,
I know you joined us late.
yeah.
We
I
we touched
did,
on,
sorry.
okay,
I was
touched on.
talking
No,
to
that's fine.
was on
We
the phone
touched
with
on
Annette.
par a little bit and how it
Yeah.
decreases over distance. So while 4 3.0s on a 90, may sound like a lot of light, when you consider the height of a 90, which makes those tall
Yeah.
tanks. So I hate 55s for a lot of reasons. They're tall for what they are, and they're very shallow front to back. So they suck to
Yeah.
sleep. They suck to
And
work in.
they're kind of all wrong. And I also, I always use lids, and that blocks some of your light too.
Yep.
Especially, if you're not super on top of cleaning your lid all the time, which,
Right.
maybe I'm not always
So
the best at. So, yeah, I definitely need 3, and if I had a 4th on there, I think you know,
yeah.
it could probably use
So
it, and if I for that 72-gallon tank is I think 24 inches front to back, I would
mhm,
need 4 of them. 3,
definitely.
I don't think would be enough,
So talking
so
about
yeah.
light choices, like we were a little bit, height of the tank. You may need, even though a 3.0 is recommended for a lot of people running. I'd recommend a 3.0 for people running like 20 longs, 30 longs,
Yeah.
a couple on a 40 breeder. But when you get up into those taller tanks, like a 90, a 65, anything over about 18 inches, I would generally recommend looking at something that's going to have a lot more par output.
Yeah, I mean, the Twin Star, the ONS flat, I've heard those are good. I haven't used them though, but the
I know,
Chihiro's it's a pretty good light. It's a pretty good light, and it's super bright. Super
I
bright.
know. Last year, I think Bentley started a video series where he was comparing a UNS Titan, and I don't know if he ever followed up on it or if I just missed the follow up. But I was
He
curious to see how it played out.
I don't know, he's always poo-pooing other lights besides the Fluval. I mean, like, I know he's never tried a Chihiro's, and I don't know why, because, like, they're so much better. And
Yeah,
they're a better value in the end, they're a better value.
definitely. And like I said earlier, I was kind of telling folks is like, buy a light that is going to allow you. You may not need all the light or all the options right now, but in the
Yeah,
future, save yourself the headache of having to buy another light. Like you said,
right.
because I'd rather be able to turn it up than have to buy a whole nother light or a completely different one. So,
Yeah, definitely, and I mean, I just didn't know about the Chihiros. lights when I bought the Fluval light.
Yeah, and it's fairly, I think it just caught on kind of in the past year and a half or two. Before that, I mean, the Chihiros has been around for a few years, but people weren't really using them much
Yeah,
until
I think
recently. And
what
then another one, I
they
mean,
yeah, I think that they had just come out with the WRGB2 ones, which have the
hmm
so I think before that they didn't have an app. So and
uh,
the 3.0 is the spectrum is adjustable to a point. I mean, the light leans a little bit more yellowy, warm toned, um, which some people like, and I don't think it looks bad. It's just, it's another thing.
right, and so that was another thing that I meant to get to, but I this is a live stream, so I'm scatterbrained and didn't really have like a presentation laid out or anything. But a lot of people ask about Kelvin ratings. So uh, I know a lot of people associate Kelvin with spectrum or Kelvin with output, and really all Kelvin is. And when I talk about Kelvin, like if you look at a light, it'll say 3000 K, 6700 K, 10,000 K,
Okay.
whatever.
Yeah.
It's more or less just how warm or cool that light looks to the human eye. And one light bulb that says 6700K next to another light bulb that says 6700K aren't even going to look the same.
Yeah.
Like different burn time, different manufacturers, poor
Yeah.
QC,
It's the
whatever. So
marketing. I mean, higher K is going to be a little cooler colored. And I think a lot of that is personal taste.
definitely.
I
And
mean,
so
you
somewhere,
know,
let me see if I can find
there's
it.
some people who think that blue light grows algae. I
I don't
don't
know.
believe
I'm
that.
not on that train. If blue light
I'm
grew
not on
algae,
that train either because plants utilize light in the blue spectrum for photosynthesis very well.
and
Vascular plants too. So it's,
if
yeah,
algae or if blue light grew so much algae, obviously there's different algae in freshwater and saltwater. But saltwater, you'd have way more headaches with algae because generally
right.
speaking, in a saltwater tank, you're going to aim for something that's a little bit bluer, so more on the actinic side, so that you can
Yeah.
make those corals pop.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
just posted a
I wouldn't put an actinic light over a freshwater tank because it's going to look weird and
yeah,
dumb.
it's just not natural.
It's not going to look natural. I mean, if that makes you happy, but it's not going to look good. So,
And then, like I said, so I posted a link in the chat. Dennis Wong did a whole article on Kelvin and tanks, and a lot of people are like, oh, well, you'll grow more algae, or you won't grow plants as well if you use a really blue light. But he's used everything from 3000 K over tanks to 12,000 K, and guess what? They all grow the same. They just look a little bit different. Like
they
I said,
do.
warmer or cooler. That's the only difference.
Yeah, and it's really popular in Asia to blast your tanks with magenta light because it makes your red plants look like glowing fake red. But
Drives
then
me
your fish
crazy.
look fake. So that's not my taste either. But if it's your taste, just know that you can grow plants under that. I mean, it's fine. I just think it looks weird. Like if you have a
Eh,
Bosemani rainbow, it should not be magenta. And we see pictures all the time on Rainbow Fish Live where I'm a moderator where like Parkinsoni rainbows are like bizarre pink and Bosemani rainbows are magenta and it just looks weird.
Right. You see that a lot when people like buy grow lights off Amazon or whatever, and you can see it as soon as they post a picture. And so full spectrum is everybody's like, well, buy a full spectrum light. All full spectrum means that it's just a white light. It has
Yeah.
everything from purple all the way to red. That's all it means.
Mm,
Anything that's white, this freaking lamp is desk lamp is full spectrum because it's white light. That just means it has a little bit of all the colors. So don't buy into the
yeah.
full spectrum bullshit.
Yeah.
Where you see problems like these grow lights that are red and blue. They have pink LEDs or purple LEDs and blue. Like, is it going to grow your plants? Probably, because it's
Yeah.
got some red and some blue. It's missing all the yellow and green, which is, our plants don't use as much of, but they still use some of that some of that part of the spectrum,
Mhm.
but it's going to give you a headache for one. I can't stand staring at it. Like if I
Yeah,
see
I mean
that picture, I'm going to scroll by it so fast
yeah,
because I
I
don't want
mean,
to stare at
your
funny
fish are
colors.
just gonna look really weird, and the thing is most of your plants are green, so they're going to look really good with some green light, because the colors that you see with your eye are the colors that are reflected back. So that means that the plant is not absorbing that color, they're reflecting it. So if you shine green light on it, they're going to look really bright, vibrant green, but they can't use that for photosynthesis. But white light has all the colors.
Hmm. So
Oh,
you see, like a large part of your light selection, like I said, budget, goals, the requirements of whatever it takes to reach your goals, and then aesthetics. Like, and that aesthetics is where, generally speaking, so I remember somebody asked, like, is the spectrum adjustable? It's not so much on the 3.0. It's not so much like the spectrum, but you can tweak the aesthetics of it a little bit, I guess.
yeah, you can turn the red and the blue up and down. I keep them all at 100%. Or the same, like, I slide them all at 40 or all at 100 just for simplicity, and I think that looks best personally, but you
Yeah.
can tweak it a bit to your taste. I will say that the Chihiros has more color options, and it has presets also. It has a boost setting, it has a fish setting, it has a shrimp
Okay.
setting,
That's
and
awesome.
those are just different colors that you can use. I think I just have mine on all
Right.
on, because I
And
thought that
that's and
so,
I was talking about some lights like you can look and there's a par chart for a 3.0 or a par chart for a prism, par chart for whatever.
yeah.
Those charts usually state like they'll have this is with this light at all channels at 100%. So if you have a 3.0 and you bring the reds down or bring the whites down, you're not going to get those part numbers. Obviously, you're going to get a little bit less. Um,
Oh,
so if you are set on your tank looking a certain way, maybe ask somebody in your club or a local fish store if you're super concerned about the part numbers, and the numbers really don't. As far as plants go, the numbers are a lot less important. It's more like on the coral side of things because there's a little bit more range. Like plants, if you have 15 to 20 par, you can grow like your Anubias, your Java fern, and even less. Crypts have been recorded in as little as like 4 or 5 par, which
yeah, you can grow them in a toilet bowl, as someone
yeah.
once I mean, they're forgiving.
Um,
I
so
I
so
mean,
par is like a range to kind of suggest success. And in freshwater, like I don't know, I consider below 30 to be low, 30 to 50 to be medium. Anything over 50, like you get into
yeah.
like considered highlighting, and it's crazy now because you hit 50 par in a freshwater tank 15 years ago, and you're like, holy crap,
I
you're out of mind.
know. I
And
mean, when
now
I
there's
first
people like
started.
Raj, like fucking Greg Zierdick, and those guys are running like two, three
Oh
hundred
god.
par in a
Well, but
planted tank.
Greg, I mean, he's blasting how many T5s over that tank?
Yeah,
Whew, but
superhuman.
yeah, he's superhuman. I mean,
So,
but
hey,
yeah,
and
and when I started, I mean, I couldn't lights were expensive, and good lights were really expensive. I mean, I had power compacts, I couldn't afford anything better, and that's
uh,
the best I could manage.
my
I had
first planted tank was a 29 that I kind of stole from my dad. I just took it over.
same.
It it had an under gravel filter, about 2.5 inches of pea gravel, a aqua clear 70 that I bought and put on the back, and then the light that I put on it was a 65-watt Coral Life compact fluorescent.
Yeah.
And I ran 3 2-liter bottles of sugar and yeast CO2 on it, and I changed one a week.
Yep,
And
I
I
did.
was
Yep, that's about what I did. I mean, I had a
that was exciting back
29.
then.
I had a 29 I bought used from a reef guy with his light fixture. I switched out the bulbs. It was like some current supply crappy light. It wasn't even that good. And I put yeast bottles on it, which I quickly abandoned for pressurized because God, that was
You and
annoying.
me both.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
like,
like, oh, this
yeah.
sucks.
Obviously,
But
as far
lights,
as like
but
DIY goes, there's a lot more options now with citric acid and stuff. But for
yeah.
the cost of these DIY generator type setups, just buy a freaking pressurized setup and save yourself the headache.
Just save yourself the headache. I mean, as someone who went down that road, yeah, don't do it.
I play that
Just
game. They're like,
don't.
"Well, you've never used it." I was like, "I promise you, I wouldn't if well, I mean, I don't mind talking crap on something if it literally just doesn't make sense, but I've done the DIY, so you're like, no,
I
not worth the headache."
I have too. I mean, I even like tried different strains of yeast because I was a yeast geneticist back
Oh,
then to try to get like higher CO2 output. I like experimented with buffers for them and I'm like, why am I wasting my time on this when I could just scrape together the
right?
money for a regulator?
It
So
pays
I
for
did.
itself. It's like I've
Yeah,
said
no,
it a
it
million
totally
times in
does.
my streams. So
Totally.
I got my CO2 set up, so it's a 10-pound tank and a Milwaukee MA957 regulator for $100 in 2005.
Yep, that's I
And
also had a Milwaukee regulator
yep,
which died on me.
that's
It
the
stuck
same
open.
setup I have on my 125 today. It's run every day since 2005 for $100.
So you got a good Milwaukee regulator. The one
The
I had,
older ones were good. Yeah.
yeah, well, I got mine in maybe 2008. Anyways,
Okay.
at the end of the tank dumped on me and killed all of my fish in
Oh,
2
bummer.
tanks, and I took a break from the hobby for a long time
Mhm.
because I was done.
Right. But I
So,
mean, so
yeah. But
and
no, totally does for itself.
I've done a whole stream on CO2 and presentations at clubs and stuff. So with generally speaking, if you add CO2 to your tank, and this is off topic of lighting, but if you add CO2 to your tank, you'll see roughly a 5 to 10 times growth rate increase, and it opens up your options as to what you can grow.
Okay.
So if you sell 100, I don't know, I've got a 125, I can make just casually. If I sell plants out of it, I can make 100 a month, like no problem. So that
Yeah.
CO2
Oh,
tank
yeah.
over the course of 15 years has paid for itself how many times? So,
I mean, if I were to sell my plants, which I don't, I just give them away because I don't want to deal with that. Oh yeah, I could pay for everything.
right.
See,
Steven said he wants a miniature sun that floats over his tanks. I've actually, there's
that would look pretty cool.
every now and then it'll pop up where somebody has piped skylights to light a tank,
Yeah. I
and
saw
it's
some that they were called like Sola tubes. They're the little tube
yep.
skylight, but I think they lived in Oregon and they don't have much sunlight there.
So it's super cool. I don't know, like it's a little bit harder to control, obviously, but I don't know. It's a cool idea. I know.
If
I
you
think
live
Kenny asked earlier. What was that, Kelly?
I think it's cool if you live in a sunny place. It's probably not
Right?
cool if you live in Indiana where it's cloudy 6 months out of the year.
Yeah. If you have consistent weather that offers good sunlight, then it'd be an option. But like I tell everybody, like consistency, whether it's light, CO2, or nutrients, is the key, like across the board.
Yeah, for sure.
So I know Kenny asked earlier, and Zen mentioned the current USA lights, which I've had current USA's. I had two 4 bulb T5 fixtures in the past, and they weren't bad. Um, I I don't know. For the price, there's just better options out there than current USA, I
Yeah.
think.
I had a current power compact fixture and it was not near as good as other options at that time, but this was a very long time ago. So I don't know if anybody's using them anymore. I think there are probably better options for the price.
hmm That's like I
Yeah.
said. You don't have to spend a ton of money to get a nice light, but there's definitely like do your research on the products. And if you have any questions, I mean, feel free to ask. But sorry, I kind of laughed at this one. So this is a trend
Oh,
I've seen lately, and it's unfortunate
so those
because I've
are
seen
no good.
a
Oh,
lot of people getting into it.
yeah.
Um, yeah, it's I know Silver City, or no, not Silver City, Silver Creek, said he got an email from him earlier, trying to get a review. And I don't know. I haven't personally used one myself, but based off the stories
Yeah.
I've seen, they sounded great for about a year, and some people have had success beyond that. But this is a pretty common occurrence from what I've seen the past 6 to 8 months.
Yeah. I mean, from I've never used them, but I'll tell you this, the Fluval 3.0s, they may not be a perfect light, but they just go and go and go.
hmm
I
Yeah, so I
mean,
said it's a
they'll you'll
wealth
get
of
at
light.
least yeah, I mean, people use them for years.
Uh,
So,
Crowntail asked if you recommend white, blue LEDs or full white spectrums. I think we kind of touched on this a little bit.
Yeah, so I mean, with the Chihiro's light, it's a WRGB light. So it has white lights in it, and it also has pink lights, and it has blue lights, and it has green lights. So it has lots of colors in it, and you can adjust it how you use it. So I do think that that is a nice effect. I do think that you want majority white because otherwise it looks weird. Um, So, I mean, if I had my choice between white, blue LEDs or just white, I think I'd probably go with white. Um, a lot of it is your personal taste, though. What do you like? What do your fish look best in?
Right.
Maybe
And
you
so
don't
here's
want your tank blasting blue at you, you know?
right. So this is a map of the LEDs on an iLock G prism, and I don't know. I'm going to talk about them a lot. I'm not trying to advertise for them. I have a lot of experience with it. So as you can see, like each one of these is an LED, and they provide all different colors.
You
And
know,
on the so I used the basic model because I was cheap and just didn't need the extra features. The basic model has two channels. So you have your it's like your blues and your greens on one channel, and then everything else on the other channel. So I can tweak them a little bit for my color preference, right? When you buy a little bit nicer light, you're going to get more channels. So you'll be able to adjust the blue LEDs will be a channel you can turn up or down. The red LEDs will be a channel you can turn up and down. The green will be a channel you can turn up and down. Some of them have warm, like is I think the 3.0 has a warm white and a cool white.
I can't remember. The
I might be
Chihiro's
thinking
does. The
G
Chihiro's
yeah.
does, though. I don't
So
think
it's
the Fluval does.
not all whites and not all blues are
Mhm.
equal. And when he's like, we talked about Kelvin a little bit earlier. So a warm white is going to be like 6,700K and down. A cool white's probably going to be like get up towards like
10,000
10,000K and
ish.
up.
Yeah. And it kind of
Um,
just depends what you like. I mean, I used to grow mine under, I used to buy 10,000K bulbs. I thought that looked nicer. It's just
mhm.
my personal taste, you know?
Yep, I ran two 6,700s and I ran two 10,000s on most of my stuff. I
Yeah.
went all the way down to try out some 3,000s. And I was like, I'd do like one 3,000. I had a 20 long. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do this like mineralized topsoil deal where you take the
Oh,
dirt out and
did you
you
do
put it
that
on a tarp.
too?
You put it on a tarp
I
and you
did
get it
that
wet and you let it dry and
too.
get it wet, let it dry and get it wet
Oh
and
my
let it
God,
dry.
Mike,
I've
but
got
let me
pictures. What a
tell you this.
headache.
I did that living in a condo. Can you imagine doing that indoors? Oh my God, I baked it in my oven. I would say, why didn't my husband divorce me because of that? But
Oh
I
God.
mean, we get divorced, so maybe that contributed. I don't know.
Could have been.
I mean,
And thankfully that's something like a lot of people so like a lot of it's becoming more and more common or at least on the internet to set up planted tanks with loose soil under like a sand or gravel cap. um, and there's different ways to do it, whatever. I don't normally recommend it. It usually leads into a fucking headache if you ask me. But anyway, luckily we don't see people mineralizing topsoil anymore. I don't know if there was
you,
actually beneficial or
you
not.
know, I tried it because I heard like it was like Aaron Talbot who had the article about it, and he raved about it so much, and so I'm like, oh my God, I gotta try it. Algae
Oh, I
City, man,
tried it. And it's
algae.
like I said, I set up it was a 20 long. I did the
I did
mineralized
20
topsoil
long.
thing,
God, we
and
were
then
probably
I
doing it at the same time.
I had a 4 bulb T5 that I put over it, so it was about 100 watts of light. I had a 6700K, a 10K, an actinic, and a 3000K. Just to
Wow.
it was like just to tweak colors. And I think on my stream the other day, I'll see if I can. Are you familiar with Marian Starion at all?
Mm-mm.
He's from Romania. I'll pull up his tank while we talk. Um, but he uses T5s. I honestly wish T5s were more affordable anymore
They're
and
beautiful.
easier to find.
Tom Barr is a huge T5 guy. Greg Zidek. Greg's tanks. I mean, Greg's a wizard, but I don't want to DIY anything.
Oh no.
Nothing.
So Papa Shrimp pointed out the difference in growth between red lights and blue lights, and I'm sure you can speak to this a lot. 'Cause-
Here's the thing, plants So the active spectrum of chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B has a peak in the red light spectrum and the blue light part of the spectrum. So it uses both of those wavelengths very well. Now, plants also have accessory pigments. So they have carotenoids that act as like little antennas around the chlorophyll to take in other spectra of light, and that way the plant can use it. So plants can use other wavelengths of light too. So I mean, white light is made of all the colors of light. So the green light that's in there, most of it is going to get reflected back to your eye, and your plants are green. And so your tank is going to look pretty and green. So even though the plant isn't using it, it's going to look really good. So, I mean, you can grow things under red and blue light if it makes you happy, but it doesn't necessarily look that good. And it's not necessarily that much better. But if it makes you happy, you should do it. I really love to have Steven do my DIY for me. Come up here and do it for God. I don't
Now,
let's put it this way. If there's a cordless drill involved, I am out. I'm out. No, no power tools. I don't know how to
uh,
work a cordless drill and I'm not interested in learning.
so I've seen some studies, not with aquatic plants, but with terrestrials, where if you use more blue than more red, I can't remember which way it is, but uh, you'll see different growth shapes. Like I think blue usually elongates it a little bit, and you see a little more
Yeah,
internodal.
they can be a little bit more etiolated, so a bit longer node length, but it's very different depending on the species. And when you grow plants underwater, the blue light spectra is higher energy, and so it penetrates the water column better. Let's looks at Chad more at this. I mean, we're pros over there, Steven. We're pros. So, and I can't look at chat at all. I'm on my phone. I mean, if it makes you happy to grow your plants under one spectra of light, you should do it. But you can't convince me that it's actually better.
Right. Now here's a name I haven't seen in a long time. Holy shit.
I don't
Jeff
know.
Rose, what's up, dude? You don't know him?
I don't.
Real.
Hi.
Oh,
I'm
he's not
just.
real big. He's in Iowa, people, believe it or
I'm.
not.
I'm from Waterloo originally, and I lived in Iowa City for 10 years. I
No,
lived in 8 years.
he's from the Newton area.
Okay,
Jeff
I
Rose,
know
I
where.
hope you're still around, man. I didn't mean to. I wasn't trying to not see. I'm bouncing between a bunch of different stuff right now. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm not paying a ton of attention to the chat. But Jeff Rose Fish Keeping, he used to stream a lot. He used to have a big setup with a bunch of plecos and stuff. If you've ever seen any of the pleco versus watermelon, pleco versus green beans, pleco versus literally any food,
I have.
that's probably from Jeff Rose.
I have not, but I don't really think about plecos much. I don't really like plecos, so I'm anti pleco. ABC,
But no,
all of his turts tanks are dirted. I think your tanks are super cool. I think
yeah,
you do really cool work, and I love your scapes. I think they're awesome. You should just keep doing what you're doing. It works for you.
yeah, and that's like you said, as his name implies, he's trying to create a biotope, whereas
Yeah.
most people setting up a planted tank, it may not be the best option for them.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to create biotopes, but I think your stuff is cool, so you should just keep doing it.
Atkins is growing herbs, or used to
Which
be at
are
least.
growing ones that are Louisiana, perhaps.
Um, First time
Unfortunate.
here for no, he had like things went to hell pretty
Oh,
bad for him for a little while there. So, Jeff Rose, I hope you're sticking in here. I know
hope
you
it's better.
and the family have been super busy. Hope it's getting better for you, and I hope we see you around YouTube a little bit more. It's nice that you're checking in. I appreciate you stopping by. Would love to catch one of your streams again one of these days. We haven't forgot about you, bud. I've got a I've got a couple Jeff Rose fish keeping shirts. I'm trying to. I'm killing my laptop over here trying to do too many different things. But if somebody has the brain power, cough cough, Mandy, cough cough, to find Jeff Rose link for his
I
channel, that would be
mean, it's
awesome.
not me. I'm on a phone. I can't even see chat. I mean, I'm sure you guys are all saying great things. Hi. I don't say
Uh,
pleco like that either, Matt. Yeah.
I'll fight you.
We don't say it like that in Iowa. We say pleco. You're not a
I'm not.
true Iowan.
I'm not in Iowa right now. I'm in Oklahoma. I'm trying to play the part and fit in. Okay.
When are you coming? When are you going home?
Well, so I was supposed to fly the other night, but the airplane broke, so I have to wait about another week. I'll probably get home on the 19th or 20th, um, which
Oh,
is just another week away from my tanks. But the wife said she scrubbed a bunch of algae out of one the other day. I
oh,
turned the
that's
lights
not
down, and of
okay.
course, the weekend I left, my 10-pound tank that fits under this in the stand for the 125 went empty. So I had to
Yeah.
set up the 20-pound tank next to it. So I
Mm-mm.
which it's got an older solenoid and regulator on it, so I'm hoping it sticks. Um, but but we'll see.
Want to
Uh,
get two Higer 958 4-foot lakes for a 40 breeder. Any thoughts? Spend any serious money on fish? Not lightly. Okay. So I have never had a Higer light, but I do think that you should get two fixtures so that you have coverage from front to back. And you should put them up on either legs or hang them somehow. Steven is a good person to ask about that because I know he's used those lights and I think he's happy with them. I think that's what he uses for his plant farm and it does really well. It grows all kinds of stuff. So you should ask him, but I think you do need two fixtures. And you should spend lots of money on your fish cuz you can't take you.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely, unless you're, I don't know, it's a 40 breeder. It just the issue is the width front to back, right? So that's why I'd recommend two lights, not for the output itself, because the 40
Yeah.
breeder is short. You probably have more than sufficient par. It's just gonna have crappy spread.
Yeah.
So even if I was running prisms, I would put two prisms front to
And
back side by side on it probably.
I have two Fluval 3.0s on my 40 breeder, and I think they're turned down to 60%. 100% is too much. Too much. Can't
Oh yeah,
control it. And I use CO2. So, but I think that there are higher fixtures that are adjustable, and dimmable. And I don't know, Steven knows how to do that. He can, because he's used those. I haven't. But
right,
you do need two fixtures for coverage.
definitely. It's like I said, I don't know. Um, I know with a lot of the higher end lights, they provide like a par chart or a par map where they actually map out like a square below the
Mm,
light so that you can see how well or how poorly that the spread of that specific light is. I doubt
yeah.
there's anything out there for Higer like that yet. But if somebody has one and they have access to a par meter, the rest of the Planet Tank world would largely appreciate it if you did.
Yeah.
So
But
just take measurements.
yeah, having it on legs or hanging it will help the spread because the light is like it shines in a cone over it. So if you think about it, if you have it a little bit higher up, you're like lower down in the cone, so there's more spread. I mean, you lose some intensity, but with a 40 breeder, like it's such a shallow tank that that doesn't really matter. But I still think you need two fixtures. You're going to be a lot happier. Let's put it this way. I started with one Fluval 3.0 over my 40 breeder because Bentley was like, just put it on legs. It'll be fine. I just was never happy with it. Just because it just didn't have the coverage. Like the back wouldn't
Mhm.
get enough light or the front wouldn't get enough light. And then I put a second one on and I was much happier. Much
All right,
happier.
good. So.
So,
Yeah, saw the spread thing, and you'll see it varies. We talked this about a little bit earlier. Spread versus like with a bar, a strip light like that versus something like a Kessel, like the Tuna Sun, or different options. So,
yeah. Those
uh,
tuna sunlights look so cool, but they're stupid expensive.
yeah,
Stupid
you're gonna spend some money,
I mean, I love the way that shimmer looks, and I know that's because it's a point source. That's why you get the shimmer. I love the way it looks, but like you get nothing with that light. There's no adjustability. I don't think there's an app, but it's stupid expensive. Like, I don't get it. I don't get it. I mean, a lot of times you get what you pay for, but I don't see it with that.
right? And I've heard with a lot of people, like they'll ask me, they're like, what about Kessels? Because Kessels are expensive, and it's not a bad light. It provides a lot of light, and it looks super cool. But with Kessels, and this is purely anecdotal. I've never used one.
I
I've
haven't.
never had anybody personally say uh, that they 100% experienced it. But for some reason, Kessels have a reputation of not growing red plants very well, or at least not displaying their
Hmm.
color very well.
I mean, I will just say this that I can't think of one serious either plant grower or aquascaper who uses them. Not
Nope.
one. I mean, the lights that are popular among serious growers and aquascapers are either like T5s that are DIY'd, which is not my jam, or a Heroes, the ONF, the Twin Star, or the ADA solar light. That's what I
Hmm.
see. I can't think
And
that's what they all use.
I made a short about it the other day, about find somebody that's successful or find somebody that does something you like and try to emulate that.
Yeah.
So if you don't see, obviously some of the big names are sponsored or have the ability to be sponsored. I get it,
Right.
but a lot of them aren't, just because there's not money for it in the hobby a lot of the times. So if you see somebody using uh, a lot of people using similar lights, they're doing it for a reason, and they're extremely successful because of it.
Yeah.
So,
And the converse of that is true too. And that
oh,
is if
exactly.
they ever show their tanks and their tanks look like crap. I don't know
Their
if I'd
advice is probably
but
crap too.
yeah.
No,
Your
I
pl-
try to give out a lot of advice, and I think it's sound, but my tanks look like crap just because I'm never home. Like,
well, true, that's not your fault. But you have grown good looking plants when you're home for more than 4 weeks at a time.
right? I just wish it happened more often.
Your plant farm
Um,
is pretty awesome. It's grown some really good stuff. It's quite the farm.
and one of these days, I'll actually get home so that I can send you guys some plants because they are running rampant. So this is one of Marion Sterion's tanks. So he's very like
Wow.
largely Dutch style,
I
I,
do
I
know
would say.
I do know who he is. And yes, his tanks are beautiful.
But I wanted to show more or less a picture of like some of his lighting. Not say like the lights. Oh, don't do that. Oh, come on, somewhere in here. But this is actually a decent picture that'll kind of show what I'm talking about. Just the number of different light bulbs that he
Yeah.
uses in his tanks.
That's
This one probably has
great.
at least four different, not as like colors, but different types of light bulbs. I used to, when I ran T5s, I was fond of the Geissman. The Power Chromes were a little bit more of a white, and then they had was it the Flora, like the
Yeah,
Flinted Flora or
I've
something?
never run T5s, but like I've seen Greg's IDEX under the hood shot.
Oh my
And he's
gosh.
got oh my god, he's got so many kinds of bulbs. Those bulbs are expensive and your power bill, I mean, your electric bill is it's gonna, it's gonna be a little fatter than it could be. But they
I
do
mean,
look really good. However, I will say this. This is a criticism I have of those tanks. I think the fish look super weird. Like with all those magenta bulbs. I think they just look weird.
oh, yeah, and that's why you have to go with like a fixture that has like 8 bulbs in it, so that you can get some of that magenta to like pop the magentas. But a
Yeah.
lot of like bulbs are primarily white for the most part, but they throw in like a red or a magenta, especially if you um, like Tom Barr. Like if you look at his tanks, he's got like an I think he actually just sold it this year. But he had an 8 bulb T5 that he used over his. I think that was over his like I don't know that big tank that you saw forever. That was like his like staple that everybody was in
Yeah.
love with. One that
I
had like
mean,
the different lines that extended in different plant colors. But
yeah, the plants looked fantastic, but I think the fish look a little weird. But it's personal taste.
yeah,
If
and I don't
don't,
have to stare at your tank. So if you like that, then
if it makes you happy,
you do
I can't argue with the plant growth though. Oh my god. I
right.
mean,
So
no.
and at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. I can like try to help you understand the science of behind what makes a good light. Um, but I mean, I can't choose the right light for your budget. If you say these,
Right.
my goal is a medium high light uh, tank, and I can spend $200, and it's a 20 long. I'm like, okay, I can hook you up at like easy enough. So I can point you in the right direction. If you want to tweak that light to whatever color that you like, that's on you. I don't care. I don't have to see it. I gave you the science behind the answer, and anything beyond that is on you. If you have questions about growing them, I can try to help you growing them. But
Yeah, I mean, and just like I have no desire to DIY anything, I have no desire to be known for my equipment testing. Like I use what I've used and I can tell you if I like it or not, but I am not doing any rigorous controlled like that. That sounds very unfun.
right,
I mean,
like people,
equipment is a necessary evil for me. I do not like enjoy it. It's not a fun part
right.
of the hobby.
Kenny's 265 had 12 T5s plus 3 black
Whew.
boxes. And I see this a lot. So well, not necessarily a lot, but it seemed like so reefs were largely either T5 or metal halide, and then
Yeah,
there was kind of a push towards metal halide, and then they hybridized into like smaller metal halides with T5s on the sides,
yeah,
and now they have LEDs like an LED puck or a couple LED pucks with T5s on the sides. It's like
yeah.
I think T5s give you that diffuse, so you get a good spread. You combine them with a small halide or an LED in the middle to get that point source for the shimmer, and it looks cool. And then I'm still not convinced anything grows stuff better than T5s.
I mean, I also think that reef keepers just aren't happy unless their electric bill is $500 a month. It's what they like doing. I mean, they're also not happy unless like it's the most convoluted, complicated tech setup possible.
Right.
It's what they like to do. This
Yeah,
fertilizer for free and all-in-one powder. So, is it a terrestrial fertilizer? If it's like Miracle Grow,
yeah,
and
I
I would use it. Yeah, I'd run
wouldn't
away from
touch
that.
it with a 10-foot pole.
The thing is this, if you wanna use dry fertilizers and they can save you a lot of money, they're very cheap. You can buy them. I bought some from Greenleaf Aquariums from GLA. You can also buy them from Nylock G. You can use a calculator online, PI dosing or PPS dosing. It's very cheap, and, do that if you wanna save money, which I totally get. I used to dose dry fertilizers all the time. And now I don't. I just use all-in-ones, and it's fine, and it's
I, I still does dry. You
not
said
as many
20
tanks
bucks.
as you do.
What's that?
I don't have as many tanks as you do.
I only dose the 125.
Hmm, yeah.
So so I dry dose that. 20 bucks lasts me over a year. But I do keep,
Yeah.
pick your favorite all-in-one. Everybody's got their preference. I use Thrive because I can get everything all in one place. But I keep a bottle of Thrive for when I'm on the road.
Oh,
I
that's
tell the wife, I'm like,
nice.
hey, so when I'm home, I eat a dose, and then when I'm on the road, I'm like, hey, 5 squirts, so to speak.
I've used Thrive, I've used Easy Green. I can't tell a difference. I know they have slightly different composition. They both work fine.
I say
Yeah,
most
I've
people.
were all we had back in the day, that's right, and so,
Um,
I would measure everything out every day and it's fine, and you can save a lot of money that way, but
so,
now I
uh,
just use the all-in-ones, you know?
so Geek Boy, if you've been around long enough, and I mean, you've been around longer than I have, but I used to get my ferts from Rex Griggs before Rex
Yes,
Griggs passed away.
Rex Briggs. There's a salty old man. Whew.
So, if you're familiar
Oh,
with for those of you that use CO2, the Griggs style reactor, Rex Griggs used to sell ferts, and
and he used to sell regulators that he would build, and his regulators were actually really good. They were
so
very sturdy. I had friends
it's
who had
dating me, and it makes me like you'd think if I know Rex Griggs because I bought his stuff that I'd be better at planted tanks than I am, but life gets in the way sometimes. So do priorities.
same here. Same here. I had to take a break.
700 a month in electric. You're probably running a chiller, I'd imagine, if you're running halides, and
Yeah,
that's a lot. I mean,
expensive.
you're honestly like fracking stuff out. You're probably making that money, no problem. But just from like the electric point of view, I'm like, yeah, yeah,
It's a lot.
add up.
It's a lot. I mean, and it's not just the money you save, but you think about like, that's a lot of carbon footprint. We should all, try to reduce that a little bit. I say as I fly to the Bahamas every year. I mean, it's still, we should try a bit. So
Gina's glad she's not in the middle halide era. Me too. So I always wanted, I never got around to it. I always wanted to set up a planted tank running halides just because not a lot of people did it, and I just wanted to try it.
I remember
Um,
there was this guy on Aquatic Plant Central. He was a mod. He had a 220 with metal halides. Oh my god, it looks so good.
I think I've seen it.
He was Guayak boy, and then he changed his name to his name. Anyway, his tanks. It was
Super
fantastic.
cool. I
I bought
remember
I bought plants from him a couple times, but
the
yeah,
way
those metal.
way back when there was a build thread. I can't remember which forum it was on. It was probably on a few of them. Somebody had like it was like a 365 or a 400-gallon corner tank, and the tank itself was lightly planted, and then they had terrestrials above that, and then
Yeah.
they had a net around the outside because they had birds that nested in these plants, and
Wow.
they had birds breeding over this fish tank. Like it's like a aviary type. Holy smokes! It was
Wow.
probably the coolest thing I've ever seen.
I don't remember that, but my hat's off to them. That's pretty awesome. So can you just mix your own squirt ferts? You sure can from dry stuff. You can also just measure them with measuring spoons right into your tank. I've done that. That's what I used to do.
That's all I do.
Once it's mixed, does it not lose its potency? So the macros certainly don't. The micros, I mean, they can. I would put them in an opaque bottle and use them up within, mm, I don't know, a couple months.
Hmm.
So I would make up
Because
batches of them.
so
But yeah,
I've never mixed them myself. I have like I'll mix. So if you EI dose, estimative index, you usually dose like your macros one day, micros the next.
mhm,
So I would pre-mix, like I had little Tupperware containers that had the days of the week labeled on them. So I do like Monday, Wednesday, Friday were macros, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday were micros or whatever.
it,
Like I was using them, but I was using them like every day, so they didn't sit long. I know some people will put a little bit of glute or Excel just to inhibit any algae growth in there.
yeah. I used to make mine up at work. So I would use like autoclaved water, and then I would autoclave my macros because I autoclaved everything.
If you have access, sure.
Yeah, and my micros, I think I even millipore filtered those so they didn't grow anything with them. But I worked in a lab, so that's what I did.
But it was just having access to stuff helps a lot.
You made a lot of money from it back then, yeah. Plant
Uh,
wire ferts. Well, every plant needs some nutrition from something. So it can get it from root feeding. So if you have a nutritious substrate, if you use root tabs or if you use nutritious soil, or it can get it from fish poo if you have a heavy enough bio load and you feed enough, or if you dose it. But all plants need something. All plants need macros and micros. There's no getting around it.
Some
It's
people
just
just
where
have
you
really crappy tap water. Like,
some people do, but even then, if you have enough plants, it's going to use it up. And if your water is so bad that it's enough to feed your plants for the whole week, you should not be
I
drinking
shouldn't
that.
drink it.
Like, you should be filtering that shit for your own health. Like, nitrates are not good for you. You can
And
tolerate some, they're not good for you. This is
all
Dr.
right.
giving you health advice. So
Pre- Appreciate you looking out for us, mom.
that's right.
And like you said, so we resorted to plants that don't require ferts. There's definitely slower growing plants or less demanding plants. And if you appreciate a type of tank that requires, a little less maintenance or a little less or fewer products put into it, you can definitely have a beautiful planted tank. You don't have to dump the money and the effort into some of the fancier plants. You can have some awesome plants or some awesome planted tanks that simply they're a little bit simpler plants. It's a little bit slower growing and it's less work. So uh
Use
Kenny
white
uses all kinds
tea.
of stuff in his.
Wow. So, ABC, are you good at growing terrariums? Because I want to set up some terrariums for Christmas gifts and I want to know what to use for substrate. So, I'm going to ask you about that later. But you're very clever in your soil mixes. You have the coolest biotopes. I love your tanks.
Right. So I've actually I'm a little bit torn. So the 125 ever since I've got it has been like full blown like wide variety of plants, a lot of color. I've thought about making it like a borderline blackwater type biotope thing and maybe even draining it to like 50% and make
Hmm,
it like a bog almost. I don't know. It's in the
I
living room. I haven't decided yet.
I mean, I have thought about doing a paludarium. And so at Aquashella, Jake saw some of these paludariums and he's like, "We need to do that." And I'm like, "But our stupid cats."
Yeah.
That's the only issue. I personally don't really like I don't like black water. I mean, that's just an aesthetic thing though.
Well,
I
it's
don't
it's an aesthetic
or
thing. I wouldn't want all my tanks. I've just seen some cool ones. I'm like, hey, that's different. That's pretty neat.
it's good to try new things. I'm not saying that it isn't a valid art form and that it isn't good for fish. I just don't want a 90 gallons of tea in my dining room.
Right.
So just
Steven,
dirt with no tap. I haven't
I think he
tried.
was talking to Kenny, but um, I
I
would
mean,
not do that.
I would not do
I would
that.
lose my mind.
I mean,
So there, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, and you can, it's natural, obviously. You can grow a tank like that. Personally, I could never do that because I like to move stuff around too much, and even with a cap, I lose
yes.
my freaking mind. I
Yeah,
lose my mind.
I've tried a dirted tank and I'm done. But if it makes you happy, you should do it. Tropica Premium. I have never tried Tropica Premium. I would like to. So, oh, you've done paludariums, terrariums, vivariums, all bioactive. Okay, that's awesome because I want to do some terrarium. I want to give
Sweet.
as Christmas gifts. I want to get like I don't know, maybe like 2-gallon glass jars and build them, give
Very
them to
cool.
people.
It sounds like we just need to do a stream on like paludarium, terrarium stuff now because
We
Kenny
should
is going to teach
learn
us.
more. Yeah, Kenny should teach us. We could learn more. That would be cool.
'Cause
Because
I
Jake
have
really, I mean, and if it would make Jake happy to have one, maybe we should.
right. I've
Mm,
got a so I built. I don't know if you've watched the video or not. I think you have the video of my old paludarium, which was it was a 30 extra high, which I'll never freaking do again.
yeah.
I will not own a piece of glass that shape ever in my life because it was 24 by 12 by 24.
Ooh.
And then
Ugh.
if that wasn't bad enough to try to work in, I decided to use foam and egg crate to build like a shelf across half the back of it, and then I built a wall on the back. So I had uh, Japanese blue star endlers and cherries in the bottom because there's about 8-10 inches of water,
Yeah.
and then above that I had some starry night reed frogs that ran over all the vines and did stuff.
Ooh.
So it was super
What did you
cool.
what did you feed the frogs?
The frogs I fed pinhead crickets and Drosophila. I had
Wing.
Hydei and Melanogaster.
Yeah. So, because Jake's like, why don't we get some little frogs? And I'm like, but we would have to feed them insects. And then he's like, let's never do that. And I'm like, I agree. I mean,
Yeah,
I've Drosophila labs. I certainly know how to grow them. But
right. They're easy enough. The pinheads I had to order pinheads in
ugh,
all the time. Then you have to dust them, and
no.
so it's a lot of work. So yeah, I'd never do a 30 extra high. If I ever did a tranium again, or paludarium, or vivarium, it'd either be front opening or it'd be something short and wide so it was easy to work in because that thing was a nightmare, an
Yeah,
absolute nightmare.
would kind of like one of those front opening ones. That would be nice.
So I got, it's been a year and a half now, I think. I got one of the front opening 40 breeders
Mm,
from Exoterra, I think. It was on sale for like, I think Petco had them for like 50 or $60.
well, that's nice.
So I think I might have been deployed. So I called my wife. I'm like, hey, if I order this, can you go pick it up like now? Because I promise you they're going to disappear.
And she's like,
So she went and got it, and it's a super cool tank, and it's like ideal for like mantellas, or could do like a snake or something. But it's just sitting in my garage collecting money or collecting dust,
but not collecting money,
not
sadly.
collecting any money. No,
Sadly.
I'm like, and that now I'm like, sweet, I want to set this up, but what do I want to put in it? I'm like,
Mm,
you know,
yeah, I mean,
uh,
I think I don't want to put any inhabitants in it because I don't want to culture live food for frogs. I would like to have frogs. I think frogs are cool. I mean, but no. Jenna just draws the line at breeding roaches. Amen, Jenna. Amen to that. I too draw that line. I am not
no,
breeding roaches. Yuck.
nope. I
Be a roaches
they don't
instead of
like
crickets. Gross, gross,
they
gross.
don't creep me out, but I mean,
Yuck.
I don't know if I'll ever own anything big enough that would regularly eat them.
Yeah, I mean, you also have a garage. I think that helps. I don't have a garage.
Yeah,
Ugh, no. I mean, I feel like I'm overwhelmed by pets as is. I think that would make my life harder.
I just
Like,
oh
damn
my god.
pets.
I just ordered 4 food cultures from Paul Pierre. I got Walter worms,
Mm,
banana worms, vinegar eels, and microworms. And like I told him like I don't know when I'll be home, so don't ship them yet. I said, please, for the love of God, don't ship them to my house.
I don't know your wife, but I don't know that she's gonna want to take care of those. I
No.
mean,
So I
I don't either.
it's like I've done microworms. Microworms are good for a couple weeks and then they go sour.
Yeah.
Vinegar eels last forever. White worms, there's like the population just like blows up and then it dies back down depending on how much you feed them. Uh, this smelliest live food culture I've ever had has been microworms, though.
Ugh.
Oof.
I
And
don't
then I've
want.
never kept banana worms.
That's much like DIYing. I'm not doing that. I like frozen food and prepared food. You got a
Uh,
pitcher plant this weekend. That's awesome.
Sweet.
Was
I've never kept a pitcher.
keep it outside or by a full sun window because it likes high light. It's supposed to be USA native. Yes, they grow in like North Carol or the Carolinas. Hopefully it does well. So here's my tip for you on that. You want to feed them with or feed them, water them with either rainwater or very, very low TDS water. I think your water out of the tap might be sufficient, but you want 100 TDS or less or rainwater. And they don't like any fertilization, no nitrate, very poor soil. They do like sun though. I've tried to grow them because people keep them as pond plants, and my KH and GH are too high out of the tap.
Really. I've never kept a pitcher. I had some bromeliads in the 30 high because I had the room, the vertical room for it.
Yeah.
So they were pretty cool. But
Bromeliads are pretty easy. Pitcher, So the USA native, the Sarracenia pitcher, not the what is it, Nepeta or Nepanthes? I can't remember the ones that are the tropical pitchers, but they're carnivorous plants, so they like really, really low nitrogen, very poor nutrient soil. Hi ABC, let's see this. Oh my goodness, look how cool that is. It's a cabinet. This is what I need in my life.
Yeah, that is a slick setup. I
Can
like
you open
those.
it up? Oh my god, Kenny, it's so awesome. This is what I want.
Here's the Anubias nana. It's growing terrestrial.
Yeah, I've
Pretty
grown
cool.
that before. That's awesome. Just needs humidity, which you've got. So does that have like a little built-in mister or fogger?
Yep.
Yay! That would be perfect for me because no cat can get in it. So is this a paludarium? Does it have water at the bottom or is it terrarium?
No, it's got a dirted substrate.
That's
Okay.
awesome.
That's super cool, Kenny.
That's awesome.
What
Yes,
kind of
I
gecko is that?
I want to do one of these. I thought about getting one of those Awaza Bioorbs. My God, they're expensive though. Jeez. Oh, hi, friend. You're very good looking.
What's up, buddy?
It's
What
a
kind is it?
Chihuahua gecko.
Oh, so handsome.
That's right. I remember him typing that in the chat. I forgot now. Geckos are super cool. I just don't know anything about any of them, basically.
Well, you're so good looking.
This
At
is
least if you froze it,
custom
we
built.
have something decent to look at.
So you had that custom built. So you can't buy one of those.
I built this myself.
Oh, you did. Oh, you're so clever. See, I can't do that. No DIYing.
How much do you charge, Kenny?
I'm
We need to
DIY.
make this happen. That's
God,
awesome.
if you lived closer, Kenny, I would just hire you to buy one or to make me one. That's
That's super cool.
awesome. You're so clever. You're so good.
It's
Now, do you run
got
fans on it or just vents?
Ventilation.
it's got fans built into the hood.
Okay.
That's awesome. I
Sweet.
love that.
You can see it's running compact fluorescent bulbs.
Nice.
I
Which is
think those
growing.
stupid little corkscrew compact fluorescent bulbs are so underrated. Whenever somebody asks, like, what light should I put on my 10-gallon tank? I'm like, if
They
you take one of those stock little hoods and put two of those corkscrew bulbs in there, you'll be fine.
I had a nano growing like a little 5-gallon nano with a desk lamp with one of those, and it grew great.
But it's got like the clay balls for drainage area.
Yeah, I've
And
got
my dirted
that.
substrate.
Cool.
Okay,
So do
so
you
I'm
have what's the little critters you put in this? Is it
Uh,
thrips?
isopods
I
and
I
springtails.
springtails, that's what you're supposed to put in. Yeah, that's awesome.
and do they just repopulate in there, Kenny?
Oh yeah.
So are the springtails very noticeable? Because I'm afraid if I give my mom and dad something with creepy crawlies, my mom is going to freak out.
Well, you can see the isopods here.
I'm not going to give them something with isopods. I think isopods are cool, but I don't know if grandma can handle that.
You want to know who has cool isopods? Off topic, sort of. Bigs.
Really? There are some cool ones that have cool colors. Roly polies.
And you see the little tiny white dots? Those are the springtails.
So that's the springtails. So they are very unnoticeable. Okay.
Oh yeah, those are tiny.
Cool. So I will put springtails in them then because I've heard they're very beneficial.
Yeah, well
No,
they eat mold and decaying leaf matter and stuff.
Right.
so you said the substrate
But
is
No,
just clay balls and then dirt on top of it. That mixes you use.
so hold on,
no.
I'm gonna go back downstairs so I can explain it a little more to you guys.
Oh, because I need to do something like that in that 40 breeder that I've got because 40 breeder has the front opening doors, but there's about 2 inches below the doors for the substrate.
So Big
Yeah,
Shrimp.
and I'm just using these acrylic hinges with some super strong double-sided stick tape
Oh my
to
gosh.
hold the glass doors on, and some
What?
aquarium lid handles,
Wow.
and
So
a lock for it
it's
because I have a 2-year-old.
there's a sale this weekend. The on front opening reptile enclosures. Hmm.
So Nano asked a question that I've got. Do you put anything between the dirt and the clay balls? Oops.
Yeah. So I use like a weed mat basically, so it
Like
keeps the dirt layer from getting down into the
Just to
drainage
keep them
layer.
from mixing together, I'd imagine.
like landscaping fabric.
Right, right.
So I would probably want to do that even in a small terrarium, I imagine.
Let me turn my camera back around. Choo, choo, choo. So, what was the question again?
Do you put anything between like the layer of dirt and the clay balls? You said like a
Oh yeah,
weed
so yeah, I
art
use
type.
weed mat like landscaping fabric,
Okay.
just to keep the dirt layer from mixing with the drainage layer.
Okay, that makes sense. And like how often is that a Mist King setup or is that a different setup that you use?
So it's a Mist King setup, but I actually use a Monsoon Systems reservoir for my Mist King reservoir.
Okay.
So are you familiar with the Monsoon Systems misting system?
There was
Yeah,
so when
so
I lived in
I
Tucson,
use yeah. So I
when I
use
lived in
one of
Tucson, there was a
those.
shop setup that did it.
Right.
Okay.
So I use one of those as my reservoir for my Mist King.
Okay.
So and they sell those at like Josh's Frogs, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Or-
The more I looked,
You can
like,
get
because
them.
I
You
had
can get them
frogs
off of
before.
Amazon and stuff too.
Okay. I love that
I had
take, but
frogs before, but I had a super cool local shop. So I got all my stuff from there. But now that I don't have a sweet local shop, I see more and more like bad reviews about Josh's frog stuff.
really, oh, that's sad. They've been a
I've I've I've
time.
only ordered from Joss's Frogs a few times, but I've never had a bad order from them.
Okay.
They've been
A lot of it's
around
been on like the
time.
food. So maybe they just the cricket cultures or something don't ship well. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Like I've ordered a bunch of like springtail cultures from them,
Yeah.
isopod cultures, stuff like that. And actually, when I first had poison dart frogs, I ordered my dart frogs from them.
okay, cool. What kind of darts did you have?
I had Dendrobates azuris, the
Oh,
blue and
awesome. The
black
blue ones?
dart frogs.
Oh, those are
Sweet.
so cute.
Yeah. But yeah, so that tank upstairs is custom built. I built it myself, and it's 24 by 24 by 36.
That's
Okay.
cool. That's good dimensions.
Yeah, so because the Chihuahua gecko is an arboreal gecko, so I wanted the height for it and stuff, and then I used great stuff pond and stone, the black expanding foam. I used that and some cork bark and stuff, and you know built up the sides and everything, and then carved it all down and silicone some cocoa core to it.
Cool.
Sweet.
It
But
looks
Yeah, I
the
did
substrate that I use in that is the same that I use in my tanks, except it has activated carbon added to it.
mhm.
cool.
Yeah. The back wall, that palliadarium that I built, since the back wall was so wide and tall, I took a bunch of great stuff and then I put So covered the back in a bunch of great stuff, put some cork on it, and then whatever was uncovered by the cork, I took some of that cocoa fiber, like the brick that you like break up and
Yeah.
like moist, and I kind of covered that up to cover the foam, and it turned out looking pretty cool. And just it was the back was mostly either foam or cork, so you could just like take pins and shove your plants in it, and they'd
Yep.
stick. And then I had the bottom was about 8 inches of water. Like I said, I had the fish and shrimp in there, and then I had a small pump that would pump up and across the top, and it was a drip wall. So
Yeah, I love to do that. I just one thing at a time, you know.
yeah,
Yeah.
super cool.
Yeah.
It was a little bit tougher to maintain, and I used a small piece of like the tubing I used for the drip wall was just um, like a siphon, like a very small like siphon hose, like one of the
Yeah.
minis or whatever. So obviously it was clear. Well, I'm retarded, didn't think about it, but the tube ran all the way across the top up by the light, so it just plug up with algae all the time.
Eh,
I was like, I
Yeah.
should just put PVC
I
here
use
and I never
black.
get around to it.
I use black tubing for my mister.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
idea.
100% would recommend because I did not. I had like one of the like basically pipe cleaners on like the 4 foot long spring, and I have to try to cram it down there to get all that stuff out. And each time it'd plug up, I just take a drill and drill the holes out a little bit bigger
Another
instead
thing,
of actually wallet.
the vivarium that I have upstairs that I was showing you guys is actually everything's run off of a Raspberry Pi. So it's
Awesome.
the LED lights that I'm running on it as well as the compact fluorescent. The LEDs are all hooked up through the Raspberry Pi, and then it runs off of a reef link that's set up to imitate active weather conditions. So like if it's raining outside, my misters will turn on. If there's heavy winds, my fans turn on. Uh, During like thunderstorms and stuff, my LED lights will flash to mimic lightning and everything.
Nice.
So it's more of a that's kind of more of a like for looks, but I think it's
Right.
a cool
Still
feature of it. But
yeah,
Wow.
the light I've built and put in the BioCube that's about to get salty again runs off an Arduino. So
yeah,
never made it at Raspberry Pi level, but
That's that's beyond my skills because I DIY nothing. One.
I love to DIY everything. Like I've built from scratch. I've built so many tanks and just aquariums, paludariums, vivariums, everything. Like
Yeah,
I don't think I could tell you how many I've actually built.
yeah, I'm not DIYing anything, and I always feel very guilty when I make Jake do my DIYing for me because he's an engineer, so we can do it, but he hates it. He hates DIY. Oh, I
I
mean,
love
he
it.
does,
I mean, I you
but
save so much money
I know.
doing stuff that way.
I always ask myself, like, would I rather do my job an extra hour, or would I rather DIY this? Actually, I would rather do my job an extra hour. So,
right.
Like when the stream first started, I was in the process of cutting glass for like I dismantled a 55-gallon tank that had a broken trim on it. So I took that apart and I was cleaning up the glass to cut it to make a 33 long
Okay, I
out
was
of the
gonna ask if
55.
I was gonna ask if you built the paludarium out of broken tanks or what.
Oh yeah, almost everything that I've built was done out of reclaimed glass from broken aquariums,
whew.
or like glass that I've gotten off of Craigslist or like Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah, I mean,
A
Steven
lot
built
of
it too, and I'm never doing that. We'll put that in the column of things I am the queen of DIY. How about you DIY? That is the truth.
I've got a lot of lids that are old 10-gallon tanks and stuff.
Yeah,
Big Shrimp and ask you a question.
ever gotten the black and yellow Dalmatian looking isopods? Are you referring to the rubber ducky ones where they're mostly like black with a yellow head? Because I have I have some of those in that vivarium upstairs. So I've got those. I've got dwarf orange isopods. I've got dairy cow isopods in there, and dwarf purple isopods. And then I've got springtails as well.
I would love to be a fly on the wall just while Kenny and Biggs have a conversation, because they're both into like a lot of that stuff. And
Yeah, they would have a lot to talk about. That's for sure.
oh my
Well,
gosh.
guys, I gotta go to bed. I'm on Eastern time. It's past my bedtime. But thank you,
What time is it? Oh yeah, it is 12 o'clock, isn't it?
thank you for letting me crash your stream, and
No,
thank you, Kenny, for the information. I might hit you up about your substrate mix later because I'm gonna make some
Yeah,
tiny aquariums for Christmas. So
yeah, no problem. I've got, whatever you want to know. I've got a ton of information for you. Just gotta ask.
yeah, it
just
would be
ask the
awesome
questions. Huh?
because
Yeah, I'm not good at volunteering information.
we're very secretive.
People
No,
used to be like that back in the
Hey, we're
day, where they
wearing like
wouldn't
almost
share
the same
crap.
color shirt.
we are. We're twins. We match. It's important.
Twinsies.
I know. No, I don't DIY well, but I am a good gardener, so I can make terrariums. I can do that.
Yeah.
So,
It's not too bad.
but anyways, thank you guys. Have a good night. Bye.
Thanks, Kelly. We'll catch you later. Have a good one.
And then there were two.
She gone. No, I said I mean I'm got so many projects that I want to knock out soon. Like I said, we talked to you last weekend about the BioCube getting salty, and
Yeah.
talking to you and Kelly now makes me want to actually get that polyadarium type setup going.
So I actually have a 32-gallon BioCube that I removed the back chamber out of it, and I turned that into a vivarium for dart frogs a while ago.
Nice.
So because that plastic back chamber where all the the return pump and the filtration goes in the BioCube, that's all just siliconed in. So I removed that and then used the great stuff foam to build my background and everything, and ran the lights on it. And then I actually took the lid where it opens up on the front.
Mm-hmm.
I took that off and then used a Dremel tool to cut out a square in there, and I put a thermometer, a digital thermometer / hygrometer in there so I can measure it, so I can actively read the temperature and humidity levels inside of it and stuff.
Oh, awesome.
And
Yeah,
then put some silicone around it and stuff. But
sweet. The BioCube I've got, I'm torn. I have the space downstairs in the basement where it'll probably end up. I thought about just drilling the back of it and putting a sump underneath it.
yeah,
But we'll see. Then I could, you know, run an actual skimmer down there and whatever. I could build a fuge in the bottom and just like,
yeah,
if I had a big sump, put a fuge in there. The fuge would be, again, almost half the total volume of the whole thing. But
yeah. Before I turned it into a vivarium, it was a planted saltwater tank for my dwarf seahorses that I used to breed.
okay.
So I had dwarf seahorses from the Gulf of Mexico, and I bred them in that tank, and they would breed every 13 days on the dock.
13? Holy smokes.
Yeah, every 13 days they're releasing babies.
Yeah. See, so Mandy, Zen Ginger, was talking about getting into seahorses and stuff. So now you can talk to
Yep.
Gina and you can talk to Kenny about them. We have all the answers. That's wicked. That's super awesome. So you said you were cutting glass to build a 33 long?
Yep. Yeah, I
So
took apart a 55-gallon tank and was cleaning the glass up to cut it down into to make a 33 long.
Okay. So you're just cutting what, like 6 inches off all the side panels then?
10 inches.
10 inches? Okay.
Yeah, because it's 22 inches tall as a 55, and it's 12 inches tall as a 33.
Okay. Awesome. Now I wish, every time I see those tanks pop up, I was like, how far away is it? Because you can never find them anymore, and they're
Yeah,
awesome tanks as far as footprint versus what you actually get out of the tank itself. So,
yeah,
uh,
yeah.
yeah, no,
I
that'd be
think
awesome.
they're one of the cooler size, footprints.
Hmm. Definitely, I'd like to. Hopefully, the cost on the 60 breeders comes down. I don't think it will anytime soon because you can get a 50 low boy for something pretty reasonable.
Yeah, I
Um,
think the 50 low boys are like 150 bucks,
yeah, which
180
is
bucks or something like that.
that's it's not bad at all for a brand new tank, especially something
No.
that's a fairly unique shape. Um, but I know the 60 breeders, it sounds like anywhere that's offered them is kind of sold out of them fairly quick, and the price
Yeah.
doesn't seem super desirable to me. But
I know the Petco by me is doing the 50% off sale right now.
Mhm.
And when I was there, not that I needed more tanks, but I was there earlier today looking at tanks, and I almost bought a couple of them. But they had 3 of the 60 breeders in,
Really,
so I think they had just gotten them in too, though.
okay. Yeah, I haven't, like I said, I haven't seen one in person. I mean, obviously, I can picture the dimensions and know what it looks like, but I haven't seen any on the shelves anywhere. But I don't go into Petco, PetSmart very often for much, other than if we need dog food. I'm like, oh, I'll go wander around and look for a minute. But
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think I go through their dumpsters more often than I go in the store.
oh, so my wife, so Brittany, my wife she ran the dog grooming salon at a Petco for a little while,
Yep.
and she's like, hey, we're throwing this away. Do you have any use for it? Be like, it'd be like Aqua Sky Lights. Like, yeah, somebody returned it, so we can't sell it now. I was like, okay. So I've got a 36-inch Aqua Sky that sits over one of my 40 breeders, and
Yeah.
you get other
Like
odds and ends that are super useful.
I have found countless filters like in the dumpsters. I found so many fish tanks over the past year and a half in their dumpsters. Some of them have a broken panel or a chipped panel or something. Most of them, there's nothing wrong with them. The filters, I'm looking at a MagnaFlow 360 canister filter and a top fin CF60 canister filter right here against my wall that I got out of the dumpster, and they're both brand new. Everything's still in the plastic, wrapped up and
It's
shit. And
awesome.
like
Crazy how that shit
I
happens.
got over the winter, I got a big styrofoam cooler box, like the styrofoam shipping containers. I got one of those full of cases of bloodworms, like the frozen blister packs of bloodworms, frozen blister packs of mysis shrimp, spirulina mysis shrimp. Like,
Just in the dumpster?
yeah, cases of them, and they were all still frozen.
Because I mean, the 1 pound flats are even those are like $17 right now. I mean, the blister
Yeah,
packs are probably close to eight or I don't know, probably 8 to 10.
I
I
think
haven't
the
bought one in
blister
a while.
packs are $8 or $10, something like that. 10.99, I think. And
And
I
it was
mean,
a
I
whole
found
styrofoam.
boxes of the cases of like probably $200, $300 worth of frozen food that I found,
Jeez. Yes,
and I'm
please.
still using it. This was February, I think, when I found it, and I've still got a shit ton of it left in my deep freezer.
That's crazy. So, I haven't done it in a while just 'cause I moved and different group of friends. But when I lived in Sioux Falls, there were 3 or 4 of us that were pretty big into breeding and stuff. So once every spring, we'd do just one big frozen food order from like Ken's Fish or something, and just like we'd all get a bunch of flats to save on
Yeah,
shipping, and that would hopefully get us through the year, so we didn't have to buy any blister packs or anything. So
I've I've never tried Ken's food. I use for the flat packs. I use Rod's fish food. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yep. So he does a lot of mostly saltwater stuff.
Yeah, it's very pricey, but it's really top quality stuff.
Yeah, so Ken's doesn't have their own frozen stuff. They have their own dry stuff. But they're frozen.
Okay.
They've got like Hikari or San Francisco Bay or whoever. But
Oh, gotcha. Yeah,
so
Rod's is all like handmade, like top quality frozen food. It's like the
yeah,
filet mignon of fish food.
yeah. There was for a couple years I had a friend in Iowa that was starting up a business selling like frozen, mostly reef foods. So I'd get my stuff from him, and he I don't know. He ended up getting brain cancer, which is why he ended up shutting down. But he was getting like cease and desist orders from Rob's, I think, because one of his saltwater names was really close to one of Rob's saltwater names, like the actual
Yeah.
food, the name of the food. And then shortly after that, he ended up getting brain cancer anyway. So that sucks. We had to give up that whole adventure. And now he had for a while. I've got a video of him somewhere. A pair, a male female pair of like dragon morays, like like red and white kind of reticulated pattern on the side. I think.
Yeah.
Um, he dropped a lot of money on those. I saw those in person. Super cool, but not super cheap. And then obviously he had to get rid of them because his wife didn't want to take care of him at all, which I don't
I,
blame her.
I think the most expensive fish I've ever bought was a gem tang that I bought at a Reefapalooza in New York.
How much was it?
It was $1,200 and it was like
Okay.
3 inches.
Say because I remember like 2015, they were like $5,000 or something for a while. I think.
Yeah, this was it was probably 2016, 2017.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was like six years ago or so that I bought them.
Yeah.
But it was
No,
like
that's crazy.
it was literally like the last day of Reefapalooza, New York, and everybody's packing up shit, and I'm walking around still, and I'm like, the guy still had it. I've been eyeballing it all weekend. He wanted, I think, 15 for it, and I offered him 12, and he took it.
Oh, really? Yeah. There's actually so I'm currently about 4 hours northwest of Dallas. Reefapalooza, Dallas was this weekend. I'm like,
Oh,
I
wow.
should drive. I'd love to drive down to see it. But it's one of those things where I'm like, I don't feel like spending $150 to go drive down and look around Reefapalooza when I don't have a tank to even put anything in. But
Yeah. I do not still have the gem tang. I don't have any saltwater tanks currently anymore. I actually just got rid of so about 5 years ago I got it out of the hobby completely, and that was like probably the peak of my saltwater part of the hobby. And I mean I had my own business. I was selling saltwater fish and corals online and importing saltwater fish and like importing corals and doing a lot of the trade shows like the Coral Frag Farmers Market and stuff like that. So,
no, I know.
but I had like a last minute change in living situations and stuff, and the logistics of moving, 2,000 gallons worth of frag tanks and a 265-gallon reef tank was kind of impossible.
No, uh, I haven't been into salt since probably 2016. You were in a little more recent. Are frag auction pages on Facebook like still a pretty big deal? Because they were really popular when I was in it, 6, 7, 8 years ago. But the prices were getting like, I don't know. It seemed like the prices were starting to get insane because of those auction pages, and frags kept
Yeah.
getting smaller and smaller.
So I think they're less of a thing on through Facebook and stuff like that, and like online forums aren't really a thing anymore. But a lot of online retailers will post that they're having a live auction, but you have
Okay.
to go to their website to participate in a live auction and stuff. So I've done quite a few of those, or
Okay.
and there's a couple online sellers that I've bought from exclusively through like eBay, and I've sniped $50 coral frags for $3
Really?
on through eBay several times, man.
Nice. That's awesome. Chevy likes Blue Symposium, which is a super cool little coral. Um, I've never kept it,
Yeah,
but I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily super cheap, but it's not like real high end. But
yeah. I don't
um,
think I never really like I've gotten them in and sold them before and stuff, but I've never really kept them for myself. I was more into my big thing was zoanthids and montiporas and euphyllias, like your torch corals and Duncans. Like I had a toxic, or like the neon green and purple Duncan coral that
yep.
was like the size of a basketball. It probably had, I think it had 78 heads or 79 heads on it when I sold it. Like it was
What's
an
up, Brennan?
absolutely massive colony. Brennan.
Talking salty stuff, Brennan. If you want to come hang out and talk salty nerd shit with us, but
And then,
otherwise,
but I also had a lot of I was one of the guys that would buy a lot of the high end stuff from like Cornbread and Jason Fox. So I had some of the original three Cornbread's 3G Mummy Eye Chalice.
oh really, holy
If
smokes.
you remember when it first came out, I bought it when it first came out, and it was like $350 for an eye.
Okay,
And I had a colony that was 18 to 20 inches in diameter of it when I sold it. It's probably $7,000-8,000 colony of 3G Mummy Eye.
oh shit, pretty good stuff. I was listening to a podcast the other day. I can't remember which one it was, and somewhat related. Like people complain about like some of the fish prices and stuff. But if you get a fish to breed or a coral to frag, so you say even if you buy an expensive group of, we'll say, plecos to breed, and you pay like $100 a piece, you might buy a group of like 6 of them. So you're $600 into it. We'll call shipping overnight. Maybe you're at $700. One
Yeah,
spawn. If you can get 20 to 30 fish out of that one spawn, and you can sell them for $100 a piece, like the you've already blown up your investment. You've made your money. But the podcast was talking about, is a couple years old, but it's talking about designer clowns. They're talking about like black snowstorms and stuff, or not black snowstorms, it was black storm clowns.
yeah. I had some of the ORA Blacker Ice clowns.
Okay, so I mean the price for a couple fish is pretty steep, but if you buy them and plan on breeding them, like he worked out because a clownfish spawn is like 300 or something. Like you can
Yeah,
easily get a lot of fish out of it. So if you pay, what, $500 each for a pair of fish, you're $1,000 into it, and you keep them for a little while and go through the effort to spawn them, and you get 300 fish that are, even if they're only worth 200 or 300 a piece, like you could make a living off that as long as you can sell them. But
yeah. And that's how I got into, like, saltwater for me just started as a hobby, and then it turned into more than a hobby once I started getting into it and realizing that I started selling frags for, or trading frags for other corals that I didn't have and stuff, and then I started making a decent amount of money selling frags, and then that just kind of blew up into having a little business and shit.
and frags are probably a hell of a lot easier than breeding clowns, because I did the clown thing one time to say I did it, and holy smokes, that was a lot of work.
Yeah,
A frag, you set it up, and it just does its thing and whatever. But
yeah. I lost I started ordering from this new wholesaler in Indonesia one time, and like the first order I did through him was a little over $5,000, and everything came in great and stuff. And then like a couple months later, I did a second order for around it was around 11,000 for the second order that I'd gone through. And as soon as I sent the money, like no contact, nothing. I never got any corals, nothing. And there was nothing I could do about it because the guy's in Indonesia and I'm sending money through Western Union, and it's like I got burnt hard.
Yeah, that'll sting pretty quick.
Yeah.
Did you watch? Did you happen to watch the frag off? Big Shrimpin was talking about fragging corals. Did you happen to watch the frag off from Aquashella at all?
No, I didn't.
So it's pretty interesting. They had 4 people up there, and they gave each one of them a Gryphon, and they gave them, there were like 2 or 3 rounds, and each one was a different type of coral for them to frag and then put on frag plugs. And they
Yeah.
judged, what was it? They judged size, quantity, how it just like visibly looked, like how much glue and stuff they put on there. So it's kind of interesting to watch because they only had like one of the ones they did was Manila Spy, and like, all right, you have 5 minutes, and they came out with like, I think each one of them probably came out with like 10 frags, but like Manila Spy, if you look at it, it's like super tiny, so basically just broke, and they were trying to
Yeah.
glue them onto plugs, and it was it was it was pretty interesting to see. But I fragged a few. I didn't have salt long enough, and I didn't like push it hard enough to end up fragging a bunch of stuff. I don't know. I had a couple chalices that I fragged, and I was like, all right, that was cool. I did it. Next, Just-
I've
I
fragged
wasn't doing it at
I've
scale to
fragged a
make
lot
money.
of corals. I've fragged a lot of stuff in the past. Like I had one of the inland coral bandsaws, like the diamond blade bandsaw, the wet saw. Like I had one of those for fragging a lot of stuff too. That was a nice investment. I bought it secondhand from a buddy of mine. I only paid $100 for it, but it more than paid for itself.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah, I was surprised because I've seen people like either use glue or epoxy to attach frags to plugs. One of the guys, I think it was Jake from Reef
State Farm.
Builders, State Farm. He had khakis on. He did have khakis. But he did so he'd lay like a layer of glue down, and then he'd put epoxy on top of it, and then he'd do glue on that again.
Yeah.
And they were talking about, he was the only one that did that technique, and they were talking about it, and I don't know, apparently it works really well with certain corals. There's different techniques for fragging different corals and stuff that you know far more about than I do. But
I've never used epoxy to attach a coral to. Well, actually, I have some of the Duncan corals or torch corals and stuff like that. I've used epoxy
okay.
to attach them to the frag plugs. But I've used the putty to make frag plugs in the past, and then used the cyanoacrylate glue to attach the corals to the putty.
Oh, cool. That's pretty neat.
I used to have a shirt that said I cut up small animals and glue them to rocks. It's fragging awesome. That was like one of my favorite shirts.
See, I could see like fragging sticks like acros or montes or chalices. But how the hell do you frag like an elegance or something? Like, how does that even? You just cut it in half and the tissue heals eventually, or what?
I wouldn't, just because of how delicate elegance corals are in general. I wouldn't try to frag an elegance coral. Like I had 2 Aussie elegance in my 265, and like I had them for a couple years, and they were awesome. But I don't think I'd ever try to frag them. But I've fragged a well-so before, like, and you split it down. You have to split it where the mouth is, pretty much, and then once it heals, it'll heal into 2 separate corals as long as you don't incidentally kill the coral in the process.
Oh, really? That's it. I've always because it's like obviously like if you have like zoas or something with heads like a candy cane or a trumpet or something like it seems pretty easy or like a chalice is easy enough or a monty was like what about like the softer tissued stuff like a war coral or something.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I've had like some bounce mushrooms before that I've fragged, where you just basically you take one mushroom and you cut it in 4 pieces like a pizza, and then glue those to rocks, and then they grow into 4 separate mushrooms.
Hmm.
You know, but
Yeah.
I've never tried to frag something like an elegant squirrel.
Yeah. Brennan said he needs the I kill small animals shirt. So uh,
Yeah,
I'm sure if you can't find it, I know Annette's pretty crafty. Maybe she could make something up for you. So
give me 1 second. Um,
see ya, Chivy. Hope you have a good night. Thanks for stopping by. We've kind of run the gamut of topic. We started at talked about like nerdy light stuff for a long time, and now we're talking about fragging corals. I like it. I like it. And we've managed to keep at least 15 people's attention for the last 2.5 hours, surprisingly.
nice. Yeah, this tank behind me, I run two 50-watt LED floodlights that are like, when the tank's full, they're literally like an inch from the surface of the water.
Yeah. And like I said at the beginning of the stream, I was like, it depends on your budget and your goals. Like if you're not trying to do some fancy high-end scape, put cheap floodlights over it. I don't care, just enough to see it. And like you said, a lot of those floodlights you can get them for like 20 bucks, and I mean they'll grow plants. They're not gonna be
Yeah, I
super
think I
fancy
I
and
think
give
I
you a
probably
million
paid
oxygen.
like $30 for them, and the the amount of par that they put out for being a floodlight and stuff is ridiculous. Like I get really good plant growth out of them. I don't get a lot of spread because they're only an inch off of the water,
Right.
but I like that. I like the kind of dramatic dynamic that it gives to the aquascape being so close. And
Yeah, and that's I mean, I think Biggs did a video. He's got a something like a 180, and he used fairly cheaper lights, but he just focused them like he made a little housing for each one and focused it down so that it gave you like those highlight spots in the tank, and you get those natural shadows that you see. Like you don't get the shadows with
yeah,
like T5s or the big wide lights because it's just light from every direction. But you use those point source lights or like a light really close down, and you get those cool shadows.
yeah. Which for like my aquascapes and stuff like that, I prefer to do like the puck style lights, or
Mhm.
a more condensed light, rather than running LED strip lights or something over it and getting a nice spread, because I like the effect it gives. It gives a more natural look, I think. And to answer this question, they probably could hassle the clams if the clownfish are looking for something to host in, and you don't have a host anemone or a host coral for them, because clownfish will literally host in like a lot of different corals, not just anemones. Like I had clownfish that were hosting in fuzzy green mushrooms, but there's a chance that they would hassle them, but I've never kept clowns with clams.
Mm. I've never heard of a clown trying to host a clam. Um, a good buddy of mine had a good sized frog spawn. I think either a regular frog spawn or an octospawn. Spawn. Can't remember, but he had a gigantic clownfish, and it kept trying to host this big octospawn, spawn, and he's just beating the shit out of the corner. He's like, "Dude, you're gonna fucking kill this coral, man! Like, you can't do this anymore."
I'll tell you this:
But
the only saltwater fish that's ever bit me was a clownfish.
they're assholes.
Oh yeah, I mean, anytime you stick your hand in the tank, they're nipping at you, and they break skin. Like they'll like I've had them, break my hand open to the point that I've got little spots of blood on me. I'm like, I'm in there trying to do some maintenance or something, and they're just attacking my hand, and I'm like trying to flick them, like get the fuck out of here.
There's a local shop. It was super small when I was in high school, but they had a big pair. It was like a 92-gallon bow front, and then they had a big pair of tomato clowns in there. And
Oh god.
anytime that lady stuck her hand like near the tank, like I'm pretty sure they'd probably jump out of the water to try to bite her freaking hand because they were just aggressive.
I had a 72-gallon bow front that had a pair of maroon clowns in it, and they were freaking terrorizing me.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I couldn't do anything in the tank with my bare hands.
Zen, I've never seen Gina's store. I just haven't watched enough of her videos, I guess. So I couldn't tell you. Maybe somebody in the chat knows, but I don't personally know. Maroon clowns seem to be the worst. When I first got into the hobby, I don't know if there's any truth to it or not because I never followed up on it. Obviously, you have like black clowns, which aren't that aggressive, but I heard like the darker clowns tend to be a little bit more aggressive, like your maroons or your tomatoes. But like I said, I don't know the validity of it. Just old rumor.
I think they're all assholes.
I mean, they're damsels, so they're dicks by nature. But
Yeah, I mean, I had the clowns that I had the longest that I had the most interaction with were Oscillaris clowns, and they were dickheads. And that was in, I mean, it was in a 265. Like I had a pair of them, and then I had a trio of the ORA Black or Ice clowns in the tank as well. And you know, it was mostly the Oscillaris, the pair, that would attack me anytime I stick my hands in the tank.
oh, really? There's
the Black or Ice clowns were never really that mean.
Okay.
But the regular ones were dickheads.
When I first got into saltwater, there was a local guy in the club, and he had a 180 setup, and it was a mixed reef. And then his like showcase fish in there was he had a pair of Sanjay photons, and then one of them jumped somehow and got stuck on. I don't think he had a screen over the whole tank. He just screened the overflows, but he like built the screens of the overflows so they like slanted down. So if a fish tried to like jump and landed there, it would just kind of tumble back into the water and not into the
Yeah.
overflow. And he said somehow one of the Sanjay photons managed to get stuck on the screen. So he was pretty upset about that because it was they were not cheap at the time. I don't even know if that line is really still around.
I haven't seen them around in person, so
Because he was the only guy that I ever actually known in person to have one. I don't know if they're still a thing anymore or not, but
yeah, I don't know.
Because that was back in like, God, I want to say he bred them in like the late 2000s, maybe like the 20 teens.
Yeah.
But it's been a while. Anymore, there's so many variations out there. I haven't seen them in person, but longfin anything kind of drives me a little bit crazy. So longfin clownfish kind of
The
make me
bowfin's out.
I saw him cruising around. I figured once the lights went out, he might cruise around and then hide once you flipped him back on, but he's still hanging out.
He if I don't move around too much in front of the tank, he'll come out. But he gets kind of skittish if I'm moving around and doing shit.
Now, how much bigger will he get? I'm not super familiar with.
So he's about 13 inches now. So this is a male. He'll probably get to around 28 inches, where females will be 30, 32 inches.
Okay.
As they get a little bit bigger.
That's not too bad then. I guess what do you feed him? Like raw shrimp, stuff like that?
Yeah, that's his primary diet is raw shrimp, and I feed him crayfish occasionally.
Okay.
Yeah,
Do you like Just set up like a tank of marmocrebs, just self-cloners, and just
Yeah.
spawn on your own food.
Yep. And then I've got some tilapia fillets upstairs that I'll cut up occasionally and feed them those.
Sweet. Yeah, I bred some when like the colored crayfish just got into the freshwater side of the hobby, like the whites and blues and oranges.
Yeah.
I started breeding those, and I made good money selling them, but they are assholes. I'd literally watch a crayfish jump from one end of a 20 long all the way to the other and just rip another one in half. I'm like, what the hell? Like you got to move them. They reproduce. They have a lot of offspring, and their
Yeah.
survival rate is pretty good. They're pretty hardy, but you got to move them quick, like at a quarter inch. Otherwise, they start just turning into little assholes and killing each other.
Yeah. Well, they're opportunistic feeders, so they will 100% cannibalize each other.
I never saw them eat any of because I had some endlers in there too, and I never saw them catch any of the endlers, but they tear the shit out of each other. That's for damn sure.
They will definitely eat fish if they can catch them.
Yeah. Baby copper bands. Now, do copper bands change much from? Do they have like stages or anything like wrasses or?
I don't think so. I'm pretty sure they look like copper bands. They look like adult copper band butterflies the whole time.
Right. I know like
They're
the
also one of the
picture.
hardest. I think one of the hardest saltwater fish to keep.
I've never even tried. I don't know, kind of spooked by them a little bit. Like just butterflies in general. I'm not like.
I think
Seems
I've
like they're
had in the 12 years that I've done saltwater, I've had probably 10 copper band butterflies, and the longest I had one was about 4 months.
really.
Yeah.
That's
And
crazy
so
how.
I think from my experience, the key to keeping them is they've got to be the first fish in the tank, and they've got to be well established in eating before you decide to add anything else to the tank. And you can't have anything that's overly aggressive, or
Okay.
the butterfly is just going to be spooked the whole time and starve to death.
Um, I asked the question about because he specifically like mentioned babies, and I thought butterflies like stayed the same, but I don't like a lot of the angelfish. Ian said he likes the pygmy cherubs, but a lot of the angelfish, like what they look like as juveniles and what they look like as adults is drastically different. And then wrasses are just a completely different, you know, beast altogether as far as
Yeah,
changing colors
yeah.
and
I
they're
had a pretty decent sized leopard wrasse in my 265. I think so. I think my favorite saltwater fish that I've owned, I think my favorite was probably my blue spot jawfish. Just because he was like the personality on him was awesome. He's like a little muppet, and I hated him at the same time because he always decided to build his little den underneath my zoa gardens and would spit all the sand out on top of my zoas.
okay.
I'm like, dude, like, what are you doing?
uh, Ian's back in the chat. He's chatting it up a little bit. I don't know why he doesn't come up here. He's salty, like a couple of us.
Yeah, all these
Uh,
flavors, and you choose to be salty, Ian. Come on up. Yeah, I mean the gem tang was nice. Like so, my 265, I had a couple different tangs in there. I had a yellow tang, I had a purple tang, I had a Red Sea sailfin tang, I had a bristlenose tang, I had the gem tang, and it's something else. Why can't I can't think of the other one? The white one with the black stripes. What is it? The convict tang.
Okay.
So, I mean, I love tangs, but I think the coolest one that I had was probably the jawfish. Although my purple tang would let me pet him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like if I was doing something in the tank, usually I'd feed with tongs, but he would come over and like turn sideways on up against the tongs like I was like a cleaner shrimp or something. And I think he associated the shape of the tongs with like cleaner shrimp claws. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, could be.
But he would like turn sideways and let me. I could literally like spin him around in circles with the with the tongs. It was crazy. But yeah, I
Wow.
think my jawfish was probably my favorite.
Sometimes it's just the activities you see, like if it's like sand sifting or if it builds like a cave or something. Tags just kind of swim around and pick at algae. The
Yeah,
only tangs I ever had were yellow tangs. I always wanted a whitetail bristletooth,
yeah.
um, and then an
Did I say
Achilles as well.
chevron thing?
I think you did. I can't remember.
Okay.
But a whitetail bristletooth and then like an Achilles tang would be super awesome one day. But I've heard mixed reviews on people being able to keep them long term.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever had an Achilles tang.
So super cool fish. I think they're still probably pretty expensive. Let me look and see what I can find. Ooh, chevron tangs are $350 right now.
Yeah.
Achilles, an Achilles tang's $320. Gem tank's down to 1,000 on Live Aquaria.
Come down $200 in 6 years, not bad.
So you can get a purple for 220 or a tank raised yellow for 250. Oh,
Yeah, that's ridiculous. The price of fucking yellow tangs now. Like I remember when I bought my yellow tang, I paid $59 for him at the fish store.
I paid $40 for a pair of yellows.
Yeah.
I was like, and everybody's like,
To
oh, you
see
can't
like
eat
a $250 price tag on a yellow tang, I'm like, people are out of your dang mind.
Anybody paying for that needs to be shot. It's ridiculous.
Yep.
I mean, I think the cheapest anymore is probably like a Scopus tang, maybe. Let's look at Live Aquaria just for shits and giggles.
Yeah, my purple tang was like probably the size of my hand, maybe a little bit bigger. He was freaking massive. It's like a show size tang almost.
Atkins has a powder blue in his 30. It's a statue. Chevrons look better as GVs. Which one is it? Is it the chocolate or the mimic that looks like it's yellow when it's younger?
Oh, the mimic tangs.
Like it looks like a, I don't know. It changes like 180. Curious. Yeah, mimic. It starts out yellow and then just turns to brown or something.
Yeah, brown with like forget.
It seems like they're thankfully, slowly starting to breed more tangs and some angelfish even. Hybrid yellow cross purple tang. Never even heard of it. Is that the one that's like blotched?
Well, that's like some of those koi tangs that come in that they're like one-off koi tangs that are fucking $30,000-$40,000.
Yeah, that's insane. That's super cool, but I mean, are peppermint angels still like 30 grand or 15? I know they were kind of.
I think they're around 8 to 12, something like that. Last I knew.
So they've come down a little bit then. But I mean, how often do you even
I
see
think
something like that for
Brennan,
sale?
if he's still in here, he would know.
Yeah, I think he said he brought one or two in for a client
Yeah.
not long ago. Oh, I was thinking of koi tang. A yellow purple. Oh, that's crazy. Is that straight up just a hybrid of a yellow tang and a purple tang, Ian? It's got like weird patterns and yellow fins. Yeah, koi tang's the one I was thinking of. Those are freaking wild. It's like a fish with vitiligo or something.
Yeah.
Some funky going on. 10 grand, I'd believe it. Said Kenny guessed like 8 to 12, so somewhere in there. Like I said, that's one of those things that, and one, I have no interest in spending that much money on a single fish, and two, it's like you just never see them for sale. I mean, I spend stupid money on some stupid things, but I don't know if I could bring myself to that, at least not anytime soon. Uh, okay.
Exponential amount of funds. I don't think I'd spend 10 grand on a single fish, and certainly not a goofy looking koi tang.
Right. They're interesting to look at. I wouldn't be like, oh, sweet, that's awesome. But captive bred hybrid worldwide had one. Let me go look at worldwide quick. Curious. Oh boy, now we're running down a rabbit hole of really expensive fish that.
Yeah. Speaking of worldwide corals, I'm pretty sure the first the first grafted Montipora, which somebody was talking about grafted Montes recently. I think it was Gina on one of her streams. But the
Yep.
first grafted Monty to come into the market was a natural anomaly that happened at Worldwide Corals in one of their tanks.
Oh really? They didn't like actually do it themselves, like in
No,
usually like
because
a.
it was actual grafted corals or actual grafted Montes are a natural process. And it basically happens when the corals are stressed and they go through the polyp bailout. Like the polyps will, they basically remerged on the same coral, but different, different color variants of that coral, and that's how they got like the green and red grafted Montes. Whereas now you see people like, you see them where they cut the corals and fuse them together. It's not really a grafted coral, it's a fused coral, and you will get like different. Is that your Wi-Fi lagging or is it mine?
I don't know. It seemed like you just cut out. You said you will get where you're talking about fusing them together, and then things kind of cut out a little bit.
Yeah.
So.
But I'm probably gonna head out anyway. I have to get up early for work, and it's already
Sounds
1 a.m.
good, Kenny. Sure thing. Thanks for hanging out and chatting a little bit. So,
Yeah, no problem.
curious,
I
one of
don't.
these days you should do a how-to or like a basics video about setting up a paludarium or like even just a substrate, and I
Yeah,
think that would be super useful to me at least, and Kelly. So at least you have two customers. I
I'll add it to my to-do list.
a long to-do list, right? Awesome. No,
Yeah,
thanks, man. I appreciate it.
yeah, no problem, man. It was
We'll
a
see you.
blast coming up as usual.
Yep,
But
we'll see you. Have a good night, bud.
bye, everybody.
All right. Kenny's out of here. Now you guys just have me. And odds are, since it's been about 3 hours, um, which is both. I don't know. It's fortunate, unfortunate that we get into. Sometimes we get into some of these more interesting conversations a little bit later in the stream because I know a lot of people turn on a stream and they kind of lose attention after a little while. Mostly when they're playing like the replay. Sometimes when they're playing it live, it's like, all right, get on with it, move on, or they lose interest in the specific topic. But I feel like on the All Things Fish stream, we tend to we start pretty solid on a topic for about an hour and then kind of flex a little bit, but we try to stay on topic a little bit, but we still continue with good solid information and discussions later on in the stream. So hopefully, for those of you that are watching the replay, or those of you that have watched replays before, uh, let me know what you think. Should we try to shorten it up and maybe increase frequency to hit these topics so that people kind of are still interested? Like, would an hour long stream packed full of information, and then we shut it off and wait until the next stream? Would that be more beneficial? Um, or would maybe it be a better idea to do these streams and go back and edit them a little bit, like I was with a few of the videos last winter? Um, Last winter, I went back and I'd take a live stream and take out bits and clips of good conversations, or conversations that I thought were good, and post that as edited content versus a live stream, so people could get a little more, into the information that they wanted. Oh, Zen, I don't go back. I don't watch. I don't know if I've ever watched any of my own videos unless there was a certain topic that I know we talked about. Like I said, in those videos I edited, um, I don't know if I've ever watched an entire video because I heard the conversation once, and I hate listening to my own voice. So I don't know. If somebody wants to volunteer to make chapters in my streams, you are more than welcome to, because I know they're long, and I know I'm long-winded, and that would be a lot of effort and time if somebody was willing to do that. Definitely would not. I would not volunteer my time to do that for free for somebody else specifically. So if I'm not willing to do it myself, I'm not going to ask anybody else to do it unless I was willing to pay money for it. And I don't make money on this. It's not to make money. It's to hang out and have conversations and discussions and learn and teach. Sometimes just inspire. So obviously, I'm not getting paid for it. I'm not making a dime aside from uh, free product review offers, sort of, which obviously you haven't seen me do any of those. So you know how I feel about most of them. Ryan's here. Ryan, man, thanks for stopping by. You're killing me though. It's 3 hours in. I don't. It's midnight here, bud. I know out on the West Coast, you guys still got a lot of time, but uh, I don't know if I can drag this one on much longer. We've gone for 3 hours. People are probably sick of listening to me drone on. And I mean, if you have the time, we did talk about some cool stuff with lights. We got into lights, and then Kenny showed up, and we digressed into paludariums, and then we got on the topic of saltwater frags and corals a little bit, some fish. So if any of that interests you, I'd encourage you to rewind and take a look at it when you have some free time. Other than that, thanks for stopping by. Appreciate it. Appreciate the support. Um, Ryan, you're one of the guys I haven't talked to a whole lot. Now, obviously, my time is fairly limited, so I don't get out too much to hang out in all the streams and socialize. Debbie's here too. Did somebody else's stream just end that people are starting to flow over here? Because while I appreciate you stopping by, it is pretty late, and I feel like I've drawn this on long enough. So I know, uh, Zen, do you know, does Dr. Black still go on Tuesdays? Because I know it used to be Bentley, and then Dr. Black would stream for a little while. But that's totally not fish related in any way, shape, or form. He's still alive. Ugh. just got up for work. I don't know. I don't even know if I get his notifications anymore. See if I can find him. Not if he's still streaming, I may run over and say hi, but I can't even. What on earth is his channel name? I'll go say hi to him, see what he's up to. I haven't stopped one of his streams for a long time. I tried to stream on Tuesday nights at 9 for a long time, and then work just got in the way. So Black and I would usually stream about the same time. I can't even find Blackie's freaking channel right now. Look at my subscriptions, maybe I'll find it. But it should show that he's live, but I don't see it for some reason. Zen said he's live. I've been on for 3 hours. You guys are sick of me. Why don't we call it a night? Everybody that stopped by, even if you stopped in the very end, Ryan, Debbie, Ian, missed part of it. Thanks for stopping by. We'll run over, and like I said, if Dr. Black is usually just playful banter and conversation. Sometimes he talks about a little bit of fish stuff. But I'm gonna go over and say hi quick. If you guys would like to join, you're more than welcome to. And thanks for tuning in. Have a good night. And I'm gonna try to do this again next Tuesday. We'll see. Just depends on work. Just depends on work. But thanks again. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully you learned something, or we got you to think about something differently. If you have any suggestions, or if there's anything you want to hear, want to talk about, if there's a conversation topic that would get your attention to the point that you'd actually want to jump up on the stream, let's talk about it. I'd love to have you guys up. I know some of the topics I hit aren't things that some of you are particularly interested in. So if there is one that you are interested in, let me know. Feel free to send me an email, mike.allthingsfish@gmail.com. Drop it in the comments, drop in the chat. I'll take a look at it, and we'll make it happen. So I'm gonna head over to Dr. Black. Until next time, guys, this is Mike at All Things Fish. Thanks for tuning in, and have a great night.